Welcome in, Smite fans, to the Smite Challenger Circuit. After some fantastic SPL action, we hear on the North American side of things, we're getting the Tyrian Weavers going up against the Xibalba Storm. Some fun names to say. My name's Frog. I'm joined today by Kaizo. And Kaizo, after a week 2 loss for both of these teams, they are looking to bounce back with some new ideas here in week 3.
Yeah, and a couple of, or at least one different look going into this one. We're going to have for the Tyrian Weavers, no longer Shinigami going to be on this roster. Pringle is not going to be available to play ADC anymore, or at least they don't want him there anymore. It's actually going to be Hydrogen subbing in to play ADC for that roster instead, which in my mind, no offense to Pringles, he's an excellent player. I love the guy, but I do think that Hydrogen is quite possibly the best ADC walking into this league right now. So it's going to be exciting to see what this roster of the Tyrian Weavers does now that they've got that change coming in, how well adjusted Hydrogen seems, and what their strategy is coming in with somebody who's a little bit fresher.
And we don't have to wait at all to see how they're trying to adapt. We can go right into picks and bans for game number 1. So like you said, a little bit of a switch up for the Tyrian Weavers, staying the same on the side of the Xibalba Storm. And they've had a little bit of a rough go of it. Certainly shows of greatness, especially Elion, I think, has definitely had his peaks and valleys already in the first 2 weeks of the season, but 2 reverse sweeps in a row for this team. So you got to think they're coming in really trying to close this one out cleanly in 2.
Yeah, it's got to be annoying to get that close both weeks. And something that we talked about in week 1, I did with Dimes at least, was that this is a sprint more than it is a marathon, Frog. You've only got 6 weeks of play before you end up going to that first tournament, and it really does matter what the end result is, regardless of how many games you get, regardless of how those games look. Gotta come out with some of these set victories. So I know that they're probably itching to nail one here against a Weavers team that I have been told I've been underestimating.
Yeah, no, both of these teams looking to make their mark here in week 3, almost halfway through the first split. But as we see some of these bans come through, Naja and Serket taken off the board for the jungle picks, and notably 2 of the top solo lane picks, maybe even 3 of the top solo lane picks. We've seen Thor over there as well, but Vamana and Hercules taken off the board. I would say maybe in the top solo lane picks, that maybe only leaves Guan Yu up there in terms of the value, but looks like the Tyrian Weavers are valuing the forest right for first pick.
And that is a character that could be going to the support role. That's where I prefer it personally, but we have seen a whole lot of this guy in solo. And I really do think that, I've said a couple of times, I think that Guan and Hercules are about right here at the top, and then a step below maybe Vaman. And I'm starting to believe that a step below that might be this Horus in the solo lane. So a little bit of flexibility there for the Tyrian Weavers. Don't necessarily need to put that in any one role. They can kind of get a little bit of flexibility with where they're actually going to be adjusting and putting this pick at.
Yeah, tell you what, though, I love the response from the Xibalba Storm. Horus definitely brings a lot to the table in terms of utility, but Yamoja and Hell, I don't think you'd really have to try to be unhappy with those first 2 picks in your draft, right? I will say maybe Hell's going towards the mid lane, which we've seen her in the support role as well, so a different look, but that top 2 feels really good.
Yeah, it is a little bit interesting that we're going to be seeing the Hell instead of the support role being in the mid lane, like you said. I know that Briz likes this character, and I know that Brendan is a very familiar Yamoja player. This is one that Boyden has been playing a whole lot of in the support role for pretty much since the character came out, and we were just talking before this desk segment about what we think the top supports are, Frog, and I really do think that Yamoja certainly has a claim to be made to be like a top 3, if not top 5 support. Definitely one of those S tier characters, so they would have to try pretty hard to be upset. I would definitely agree with you on that one.
happy with those top two, and we see how the top three round out for both squads. Guan Yu picked up as the second pick, and they picked their mid laner as well, Merlin, on the side of the Tyrian Weavers. And then grabbing the ADC early on as well, Kernos picked up for the Storm. If you're way in the top threes here, who do you favor off the bat?
I do like the Tyrian Weavers here because I do think that they get the better solo laner. Guan Yu at this point is going to be the best of what's left, essentially, since they already have the Vomit and the Hercules banned out. You're not going to see a whole lot that's better than that going into that solo lane, but I do think across the way, Yemoja probably my favorite for a support pick that's available right now. Terra notably still a possibility to be locked in here, but considering the fact that the Tyrian Weavers have already their solo laner and their support, unlikely that they're going to be shunting that Guan Yu into the jungle and making him play somewhere he's uncomfortable. It's going to be close, but in my eyes, it's got to be the Storm because, again, this Yemoja, this Hell, so much healing, so difficult to play around, especially when we don't have any out-of-combat healing reduction, Frog. It's a very scary draft for the Storm.
Yeah, they're definitely happy with their top three. And as we see those bans come out, notably ADC's taken off the board, Ishtar still up, as is Rama, which I gotta admit, I'm a little bit surprised about that they're banning the Jing and the Izanami, but we'll see what ends up getting picked. It is that Ishtar. And I also want to talk about this Nike on the other side, right? Ishtar Bakasura finishes out the 5 picks for the Tyrian Weavers. The Storm opt to go after those 3 top solo laners are either banned or picked away. They're left with the Nike, which it seems out of nowhere.
It does seem a little off to me, and that could go jungle or solo. Don't forget, this is a character that isn't super comfortable in either one of those 2 roles, but is probably equally comfortable in both of them. So it'll be interesting where we end up seeing it, but this Morrigan hover frog leans me toward thinking that maybe there's some shenanigans going on here. Could be Morgan in the mid lane, Hell in the solo lane perhaps, or if that's not the case, then we're going to get real wacky with this Storm draft.
Yeah, this is an interesting 5th pick for them. I think I'm with you on that prediction. Hell probably in the solo lane. Nike certainly would not be the weirdest pick I've ever seen Elion play in the jungle role. But, I mean, on the 5v5, I feel like I'm kind of favoring the Weavers. I don't know. They've got the more legitimate draft. They've got the more standard draft. We'll have to see how it comes out for them, though, as we jump right into game number 1. Tyrian Weavers going up against the Xibalba Storm, the all-important first game of the set. Set the tone. And
ew.
Oh man, yeah. No, take it away. Talk to me. Talk to me about this pick, Kaizo.
I don't know if I want to, man. Hell in the jungle there's probably 3 or 4 different roles, Frog, that you could convince me that Hell has a place in. And I'm just not sure that jungle's going to be one of them. I'd rather mid, support, solo, maybe even ADC in that conversation as well. But the jungle's just a weird spot for her. It is worth noting that with some of the recent changes, Hell's gotten her buff clear in particular has gotten quite a bit better now that restore first ability also damages camps in addition to the decay. She essentially has 2 damaging abilities level 1, which we can see her use here to bring down this red buff. It makes it so that she can move around the jungle much more effectively and allows them to slot this Morgan into the mid lane to transform into a Bakasura, a Guan Yu, a Horus, whatever they might need. But I don't know. I just feel like Elion on this Hell is want to get bullied by just about anything that Grave wants to do as soon as he hits level 5.
Yeah, and I will say, for as much as it can potentially benefit the team fights, I mean, you know, all the way back in the day, we've seen even Terra jungle be played by Weekend, and the first 15 minutes didn't matter. And then they got to the team fights, and it was just like having a Terra in the team fights. I can see that. I can definitely see the benefit of that. But I'm also immediately thinking about Elion and how he likes to play. This god does not seem like the typical facilitator pick that he tends to fall into. Granted, a lot of poke coming out in the mid lane. You can see they very clearly have won that 2v2 in terms of pressure. But even like, you know, there's no level 5 spike. There's no clear lane that I want to gank. It just seems like Farm City.
And that's pretty much what we're going to see from him. If he tries to get involved early, it's really got to be before Grave hits level 5 on this Bakasura. Because once you get that regurgitate ultimate available for this Baka, you're just significantly outclassing what Elion's going to be capable of on the Hell as far as specifically ganking lanes and looking for these kills. Granted, you could look to get some decent value out of the slow on maybe one of the side lanes, but it's a very difficult, very awkward gank for either side. And I do think you're barking up the right tree, Frog, with this being largely a pick that is designated toward farming up the jungle, making sure that you get level 20, and then once you walk into the full build team fight going, also, we have a Hell instead of a normal jungler. It's not really designed to get involved and make something happen until that point. You're really unlikely to see them do much until, you know, at least 3 or 4 items. At least we see some of these objective fights. Whereas Grave across the way is probably going to want to prevent Leon from getting to that point comfortably.
We talked about in the picks and mans this Nike pick as well. Slash opting to go for the Goddess of Victory on this right-hand side. And I'm interested immediately in your thoughts on it and your thoughts on the build. Already opting to go into that Bluestone as opposed to something a little bit more defensive, like on the other side we get the Warrior's Axe. But, I mean, I feel like we've only ever seen Nike in the jungle as of recent, played by Sino at the SPL level, and I thought
which
that's
isn't
what we were
saying
gonna...
much.
Yeah, it's not. You're absolutely right. It's not saying a ton for where she actually stands in the meta, but it's a very different team fight look than the Guan Yu, and Guan Yu showing the pressure that he has in this lane already.
Yeah, and the Bluestone pendant that you're talking about is specifically so that she doesn't get as hard pressured out in this lane, where otherwise Guan Yu probably your favorite to end up winning the laning phase at least. And then I do think that Nike's in a vastly different place than she was the last time that we've seen her prominently in the meta. You know, before we used to see her be unkillable because that health shield was gigantic. Now that Ankh takes off some of that, now that Sunder takes off all of that shielding from you, it's very difficult to stay alive using only that cooldown, at which point you might as well try to find value elsewhere. And that can kind of come from damage, which Nike puts out pretty reliably. Not a crazy amount of it, make no mistake, but definitely can communicate the damage, and there's not much the enemy team can do about it. You're not preventing a Nike from jumping into your backline and using Rend on a backliner for, I don't know, 300-400 damage every 6 or 7 seconds. You can't stop her, so she does at least get value there, but she's not going to be this immortal, unkillable demon creature that we've seen her be in the past.
I love that, for the record. Immortal, unkillable demon creature.
Yeah, write that one down, bro.
We've seen that. That's a fantastic quote. I'll pull that back up later in the stream. But
I hope.
I mean, no, as we're watching this game, right? I mean, things starting off relatively slow. I think no surprise from both of these squads, both having a relatively later game jungler, I want to say, although not really in the same sense necessarily. Hold that thought, though. Grave getting immediately into the action, catches Briz out towards the mid lane, but that brings the rotation. A great set of walls from Bolden, traps in Tripno. Will grab first blood Storm.
And To the Skies used as well from Promise, but already Tripno was up a creek without a paddle there and could not be saved, even despite using the beads. And, you know, we talked about this Nike and what she merits on her own. It is some additional value for this pick that Briz can transform into the Nike when he's in danger, and then cleanse himself with that Sentinel Zeus ultimate and immediately get a decent-sized health shield to get out of combat. He gets ulted by Grave there, pops the ult, turns into a Nike, which is, at this stage of the game at least, very difficult for Grave to deal with, and then can just kind of disengage from combat, at which point everybody else from the Weavers was a little too far forward trying to secure that kill that they ended up not even getting. Gives Briz some decent survivability, granted. I mean, again, Frog, in case you can't tell by my phrasing, I'm not super sold on the Nike pick to begin with. I just feel like, why not turn into Guan Yu? Doesn't that do the same general idea?
Well, there, I think he turns into any tank in the game, and he gets out of there. Not only does he get out of there, but he gets to hold on to his relic as well, which we do not get to say the same thing about for Trip. Now, he may be the target of yet another form of action in the next 90 seconds or so. But talking about that Morgan, right? I mean, she or Morrigan, add the extra syllable there, but, you know, she does have those defensive options. You bring in the Guan, you bring in the Nike, absolutely, in terms of survivability. but not the best aggressive options necessarily. Like there's no Thor, there's no global potential. I see some options, but I mean, how does this team fight round out for Briz on those transformations?
It's a lot of dive men, and that's pretty much what we're going to be seeing as the only option for the Xibalba Storm draft. They turn into something that is tanky or something that dives very effectively for Briz. I think that Grave on this Bakasura actually should be a decent option, but the way that the ult transformation kind of works doesn't make it a great option. Ideally, you get a lot of value from Bakasura from your passive, giving you movement speed and attack speed. Don't get that off the transformation.
Again, Briz forced to transform into this Nike, and the ult gets swallowed immediately, but no space on the left side. It's a fight for both squads, and both squads use their escapes perfectly. Forced to use some of those ultimates defensively, but everybody gets out alive.
And Leon in the fight and left, but doesn't have a whole lot of impact there. It's mostly the walls from Bolden that make that even a potential for something to take place. But the To The Skies being able to get them out, Promise takes Hydrogen and kind of just puts him in the tower where he's safe so that doesn't have to worry about anything. And I mean, this is kind of what we can expect to see for quite some time here, Frog. Unless somebody makes some egregious error, it's probably going to be very slow for quite some time here. It's going to be the Tyrian Weavers looking to play aggressively, but they got to find somewhere to do it.
It might be solo lane. Remikami is doing so much on this right-hand side. 1v2ing, forces Slash away, and Elion does not get the memo in time. No escape on that hell. No dash, no jump, but there is a jump on Grave here as he tries to take away the objective from Slash. Will not do so successfully. I cannot believe that the Nike just out-secured a Bakasura. That is unheard of. But he does manage to secure his blue, although the first kill answered back to the Weaver.
Yeah, and it's a weird fight there for the Storm to be for the Storm to be taking. Leon walks over and starts healing up Slash as though that's a fight that they very clearly voluntarily took. I think that if they didn't want that fight, Slash could just jump out. Leon didn't have to walk up that aggressively, but they seem to think that, I don't know, Leon was going to heal for a little bit more, or the damage coming out of Remikami with this CAD club very early on wasn't going to be as significant. But trying to save Slash ends up getting Leon killed, at which point should have been a free blue buff invade on the right side, but does get taken away. Now it's going to be the Gold Fury.
Yeah, talking about free, they were looking for the blue buff. Now they're looking for the Gold Fury as Promise brings in the team there to try and defend that one, and nobody remains on the objective. Everybody's going to back off, and it kind of seems like nobody is willing to have that full-on fight quite yet, right? We haven't seen a 3v3. We haven't seen a 4v4. We've only seen the instances where somebody gets caught out, and that may continue here on the left side. Bolden does not get to move. The CC is beautiful from the Weavers. They'll take down the support of the Storm, and that may still open up the window for this objective.
They do use just about every cooldown under the sun to land that kill onto Bolden in a reasonable amount of time, so he should be up and will be able to walk his way back to this Gold Fury in case that does get looked at. And this is the woes of going this Prophetic Cloak early, Frog, because you are not tanky quite yet if you're Bolden. It's an item that will eventually make you incredibly tanky once you get those stacks online. Gotta hit a player several times in order to get those stacks, and then you get a little bit of protections and then some mitigations later on once you finally get it full stack. But at least for the time being, Bolden is significantly less tanky than Promise is going to be with the Gauntlet of Thebes. He just outright does not have as many protections, doesn't have as much health as this Horus does, and is prone to getting bursted at least for the time being. Once he gets that sovereignty online, it could be a different conversation, but they've got a window where they can really look to abuse him there, and Grave, Promise, and Hydrogen combine to jump through that window holding hands.
Well, speaking of getting bursted, the Pyromancer did also get to experience getting bursted on the right-hand side of the map, and that sort of brings us to another discussion of this composition, right? You definitely imagined, like, when I think of burst compositions, I think double ADC, I think Fafnir, like shredding down an objective, but this is just as good, if not better, than that standard line of thinking, and they have the potential to really delete an objective off the map.
Yeah, Crit is so good at doing objectives. Obviously not as good at going on structures and Titan sieges because you can't crit those things, but it's things like the Fire Giant players, Gold Fury, very prone to getting bursted down by these crits that Grave has online. Likely to see Hydrogen go into some of the same, but at least so far the build doesn't necessarily indicate that's going to be a necessity for him. As you can see, Bitey, at least currently building crit, could be a little bit more ambiguous for whether Hydrogen grabs it on this Ishtar. And then the Merlin Bakasura together is so good. You've got true damage from the Bakasura, you've got a bunch of abilities that do a lot of tick damage, plus have protection shred coming out of this Merlin. The shred is definitely there, it's just a matter of Secure being a little bit sketchy, but if the Xibalba Storm aren't even going to be there to show up, you don't have to worry about the Secure.
Quite a bit of posturing once again on this Gold Fury side of the map. No ultimates used quite yet. The Gold Fury's down to half, but it's Briz who finds his way into the backline, transforms into the Nike once again, and Tripno is struggling to survive, and he won't make it back to base. The Gold Fury falls for the Storm as well, and Ramakami has shown up to the fight. He's a little bit late, but Promise may want to join him in the front line. Instead, it is the actual Nike doing a great job of zoning, will push the Weavers away. The Storm get away with one.
And we wondered what this was going to look like for the Xibalba Storm. What is their team fight option for Briz on this transformation? And that time around, it's turning into Slash and getting a second Nike to deal with these team fights. No Sunder yet available for Bolden because he's still level 9. Doesn't have a great way to immediately burst down that shield. Means that dealing with one Nike would have been difficult for them, Frog, but dealing with two of them back to back, or even in this case, at the exact same time, was just too much for the Weavers. The zoning was so deep, nobody got to step forward other than Ramakami. Everybody else was dealing with the double Nike action that was going on in their backline. Very oppressive fight there from the Storm.
Yeah, I mean, Ramakami got there first. He was the first solo laner to the fight, but it did not feel like it because Nike was in the fight through Briz and just pushed 3 members out. It felt like so effortlessly in that fight. They were able to take down the Gold Fury successfully, although it has not led to much of a lead. Only, 500 or so gold lead on the Xibalba Storm, and nobody's writing home about their ability to completely dominate these fights at all. We've traded neutral objectives so far in this game, if anything. But I think one of the reasons they were able to do that Gold Fury so successfully, they only did it with 2 people. And I think Elion was the one to tank that out. Our production rightly pointed out that breastplate of regrowth on the Elion Jungle Hell, looking for a little bit of a hybrid, maybe a more supportive almost build.
It's probably got something to do with the fact that he knows that if he doesn't have any defense and he face checks the jungle, which he needs to do because he is the jungler, he has to farm that jungle, and he sees Grave with the ult available, he's a sitting duck. He is 100% dead. So that's just to prevent him from getting blown up there, but no time to talk now, Frog, because we're fighting over this Pyro.
Rotations have started early in this one. Already 15 minutes in, we see all 5 members of both squads grouping up on a minor objective, just the Pyromancer available on this right-hand side, but Slash getting a little bit poked out. They've got that passive healing on both sides. That poke does not have as much value, but both teams waiting for the go button, and the invis is perfect. Ramakami shredded down to 20% HP and caught in the waves. But look at the space that Grave makes. He forces the rest of the team back, and they're not able to follow up on the soul laner. But Briz does it again! He stuns 2 and forces the fight in favor of the Storm. They chase all the members of the Weavers down. They take down Tripno once again, and everybody is forced back to the tier 2 tower in right. Briz, 2-star plays in a row, and they're looking at the Fire Giant.
Guan Yu is here. Ramakami with the ult available in this Fire Giant pit does have some support coming, but he's getting bursted so fast.
Bolden is turned around onto him, and all 5 members struggling with what way to go. They're still tanking the Fire Giant, but this may be an opening back in for the Storm. Ramakami healed up by the squad, but a double knock-up takes down Grave, and Promise and Ramakami are the only 2 left in the path of the Xibalba Storm as they take down 3 in total. And I don't know that they have enough in the tank to turn around for the Fire Giant, but a dominant fight goes the way of the Storm, and Hydrogen may just barely get out of that one. They are looking incredible.
And that's a opportunity recognition from the Storm. They've got one more level on Promise before that Sunder comes online, and this double Nike composition isn't going to work quite as well. That's probably why we see them group up so hard around that Pyromancer, realizing that the window is kind of closing for them to get maximum value from that cooldown. Otherwise, Briz maybe pivots into like a Guan Yu ult or something, trying to get this Bakasura potentially, but at least for the time being, they don't have the tools still to deal with Slash or Briz doing his best Slash impression. So because of that, they take that fight, and it's actually the Weavers now looking to sneak this one.
Yeah, Promise is the two of this guy starting up this objective, but it's not shredded that fast just yet, and Slash and Bolden both are eager to interrupt this one as everything gets slowed down. 5 members trapped in the River's Rebuke, but Grave uses it to his advantage. You're not trapped in here with me, I'm trapped in here with you. And Bolden is the first to fall. Briz may be next on the chopping block if Ramakami has anything to say about it, and he'll get taken down as well. The Tyrian Weavers do not wait for the Storm to come to them. They pick up the Fire Giant, take down 2, and they're going to stay on the objective.
Slash is still here looking to contest. They've got Bitey split pushing in left, so it's a 2v4.
Slash is going to look for the steal, I think. Elion in the vicinity as well. They will not have enough to try and step in, and Elion, just for the price of sticking around, may be his life at the end of this one, as Grave and Promise continue to chase him down, and he will fall just outside of the base gate. Slash in between them and running away. Look at this split push though. Bitey on the left-hand side, and Tripno does it all. They get the Fire Giant, they get the kills, they get the Phoenix defense. They are on a rampage down the mid lane.
Desperation play there from Bitey, who just wanted to get something, but now it's still the Weavers looking for more, ulting in to this middle Phoenix.
They get the shield, they get the minions under this middle Phoenix as well. Slash onto Hydrogen in the back, and the Phoenix is just moments away from falling. There it goes, and Braze is still the focus on the backline. Grave is on a killing spree, and he'll add another to the tally as Promise takes down Slash. Grave finds a double kill, and in the blink of an eye, the Tyrian Weavers have taken Fire Giant. They take down members, but they go too far, and Elion finds a double kill to back them down off of the Titan. They'll have to take the Phoenix and leave, but in the span of 3 minutes, still with less than 1,000 gold lead, we've got a Fire Giant, we've got a bird down. What just happened?
What just happened is the Xibalba Storm draft did not work out in that fight. So the way this fight works for the Storm is they just steamroll the Tyrian Weavers. That is how this draft is designed to play. You have Briz go in Viz, and you get some kind of initial engage, some kind of chip damage onto this backline. Then you transform into another frontliner, and everybody walks forward alongside the movement speed boost and the healing from Elion on this health. But because Briz doesn't end up getting any kills off of the ult, once he goes in, he realizes, oh wait, we're not winning this fight, I need to back up. But the Tyrian Weavers know eventually that Nike turns, or excuse me, that Nike turns back into the Morrigan at some point. So they chase him down all the way to those back camps and then wait until he turns back into something that's much more vulnerable and take him down, at which point that is the core of the team fight for the Xibalba Storm. They go all in on double Nike working out and being enough to carry them through the team fight. And as soon as that is insufficient to make that team fight swing in their favor, it is already a one fight for the Tyrian Weavers if the Xibalba Storm continue to take it. They take down Briz, that's a very core component out of the fight already. No ult available for Slash anymore. Bolden has to fall back and play Peel. Elion gets smothered by Ramakami. Beautiful fight from the Weavers.
And it doesn't slow down. Gold Fury picked up by the Storm. Only 4 members here for the Weavers. They're still waiting on the rotation from Grave, but it's still some low health bars that'll force the Xibalba Storm back off of the objective. They don't have the Fire Giant. In fact, nobody does. Just now falls off the Tyrian Weavers, but They will play it smart. Nobody will die. The Gold Fury will go down in favor of the blue squad. And now we have to ask the question, right? You talked to me about how the fight goes well, what they're maybe looking for. And I think, in fact, the big thing that they're looking for is not to get surprised by the fact that the enemy team is picking up the Fire Giant. They've got to be positioned for this. But, I mean, it just feels like the Weavers have so many more tools to start this fight up, whereas the Xibalba Storm have to rely on something going well or somebody being out of position. It's so much harder for them to start the fight on their own terms.
The Weavers definitely have the priority when it comes to forcing smaller engagements. All of the Xibalba Storm is all in. It's like if you have Terra Hades ult, that is your team fight. You have to make that work in order for the team fight to work for you. Whereas the Weavers can kind of just look for a smaller engagement. All Grave has to do here is force this ult off of Briz and walk away, and they know that is a core component of this Xibalba Storm fight, and without it, they basically have no team fight, Frog. That is a huge play for Grave to get that cooldown forced out here, and that should be the Tyrian Weaver's opening to, once Grave can get a little bit of healing, make his way back over after pushing up that fire wave. This should be the optimal time for the Weavers to go in on this Fire Giant, knowing that Briz can't turn into another Nike, and they've only got to deal with one.
And especially Grave didn't have to use the Regurgitate. He still has that available, and the Fire Giant has to be shredded down. The Storm, or their hand is being forced. They have to try and step in, and they don't. The Weavers just take the Fire Giant and are pushing forward to the skies. Grabs 3 and brings the whole team right to Bolden, and he'll be the first one taken down. Tripno is on a killing spree, and the health bars are still feeling strong. They are ready to push down this mid-Phoenix.
Still about probably 45 seconds or so on this ult from Briz. That's still the staple not available for the Storm, but they go in anyway.
Lincoln from Slash will stop Hydrogen from hitting the bird, but he gets the help from his team, and the middle Phoenix will fall. A great opportunistic advantage there from the Weavers. Take down the small mid-Phoenix, low health. They've got those fire minions pushing now, and they have time to set up for a siege on left.
And if you wanted to talk about how strong the ult from Briz is and how important it is to the Xibalba Storm, it's a pretty good indication of how threatening that is to the Tyrian Weavers, that they don't even need Grave for that siege in mid. They're completely comfortable stepping in without their Bakasura because Briz doesn't have that ult. And without it, I mean, it's really Slash is the only one that can put any relevant damage onto the backline. Leon's not going to be walking his way to Tripno and Hydrogen to put any damage on them and prevent them from grabbing that Phoenix. It's only this solo laner, and kind of an engage from Briz, but he immediately needs to back up because he has no safety tool available after he gets his stun combo off. It is a crucial piece of the fight that Grave forced out from Briz before that Fire Giant. I need to make sure, highlight, underline, boldface, all of that, Frog, because no Regurgitate needed, stopping the only core piece of the Xibalba Storm team fight. And because of that, the Tyrian Weavers took a game that was completely even and have now wrestled control of it. They're in a pretty commanding position here, Frog.
Commanding position, commanding gold lead, 8,000 in favor of the blue squad here. Only a couple kills, though, separate both of these squads. And here at 25 minutes, Fire Giant is not everything. It's not EFG quite yet. You can see the discipline coming through from the Tyrian Weavers. They've taken down all the towers, that middle Phoenix, and now they're pushing down on this right-hand side. I would think they just want to grab this last tower and maybe get the Phoenix on the left side instead of the right-hand side, but it may just be this tower before they back off and are ready to set up once again for this Fire Giant. Now, I mean, I would ask you how they fight better into this, absolutely, because, and I think your answer would be, don't get your ultimate forced if you're
right.
Briz. Play a little bit safer, but at the same time, is this even worth fighting back into? I mean, maybe they have a better siege defense they should be relying on.
It is usually around these jungle fights that you want to play with the Morrigan, because your main value as this character comes from being able to get kind of lost on the map and lost in the action and have people not entirely sure where you're at. If you're on a siege defense, you know, you're likely to have players have a general idea of where you're at. You have to be somewhere in the base, you're behind the walls, you're not behind them somewhere doing something random, whereas in the jungle, you can be on the left side, you can be on the right side, you can be coming in from deep, you can be behind them, standing on a sentry ward. A lot more flexibility for where Briz is going to be positioning in this one. And I think it's funny, Frog, because this morning I was talking about characters like Afro and Hell, these healers, every time you see them on the map, they're the most critical piece of the map. The team fight is going to be won or lost based on what they do. I feel like we haven't given nearly as much attention to Leon on this Hell as we have Briz, because really seems like these fights have been won or lost based on how much value Briz gets out of that initial engage going into the ult. Actually, Frog, as we see the Fire Giant pulled here, some shenanigans from the Storm on the left side.
Yeah, it's going to be a split push, potentially. They're doing a great job only making sure that Bitey shows up on the map. Remakami's rotating over. He only thinks that this is Bitey. He'll blink in on him, and the rest of the team is here. They do not... What? They group all 5 members on the left-hand side. They make sure that they're there just to take the Phoenix. And Remakami blinks in, and everybody leaves. And now they're on the chase, and they just lose their mid Phoenix as a result. They might even get chased down further.
And it's going to be to the skies here from Promise. Bitey already kills Hydrogen in this one.
He turns one around onto the ADC, and that's a win for the Storm. Early on in this fight, Tripno is under some pressure as well, and Briz finally gets the value from that transformation that he's been looking to find. Both carries now down for the Tyrian Weavers. The small play pushing down the left-hand side, I thought it was a huge disadvantage for them just to run away, but they catch the Weavers on the chase, sleeping a little bit. They take down both carries for free.
Now it's going to be 4 members of the Xibalba Storm here. Nike goes back to base. Slash has the teleport available, but tasked with clearing these waves. They're going to try to push into this left Phoenix.
They've got the waves in, but does not look like they're doing all that much damage to the Phoenix just yet. Elion's going to be the first focus here, but Slash with the teleport in is looking to make the space and has done so thus far. Half health on this bird.
Grave.
And Remakami Grave finds the space. Remakami and Grave combine for the dive. A double kill for both the solo and the jungle, and it is flawless from the Weavers to take down 2, and now the To the Skies will push as far up the map as possible. They may look to end this one, and I'm not sure Slash even knows that it's happening. They're pushing down the mid lane, and Slash is just clearing camps over on the right-hand side. He's finally backing. I'm not sure if it's going to be enough. Promise. It goes in onto the Titan. Slash is buying items! What is he doing? He is not aware that they're ending, or he has given up completely. The Tyrian Weavers win 1 fight on the left-hand Phoenix and take game number 1.
In explosive fashion as well, because don't forget that all starts because they lose 2 members. Both of the backliners for the blue squad end up falling as a result of that weird fight in the left jungle immediately after they got the Fire Giant. So that should have been a pretty bad fight for them, but because, you know, the siege was just a little bit too disjointed, they grouped up too much. Briz steps too far forward, gets the beads forced out, has to fall back with the rest of the team. It's just a perfect blink engage from Grave there on the Bakasura. You can't draw it up any better than that. When you've got 600 plus crits ringing out on every part of the map while you're Bakasura ulting, it's a pretty damn good feeling.
Yeah, that is a that's a hard dive to beat, and I think that's probably why we see the Bakasura valued out here. The space that you get to make, not only with the Guan Yu, but the double warrior coming through. Remakami and Promise just push forward. They take all the cooldowns, man. Grave is like, okay, sounds good. I'll press the blink key, and presses the 4 key and swallows the enemy team alive. And I think you said it around the midpoint there. I think the biggest thing here is I'm looking at Elion. I'm looking at Elion he picks the Hell. They have an idea. They have a specific idea of how this composition works. And he is the quietest player on the map for 25 minutes.
He was a facilitator in that game, though. There's no reason that he should ever be the star player. He's definitely much more of a background supporter. I mean, he has 11,000 healing. He's there for two things. He's there to provide sustain in the fight so that their front line can roll forward and provide the additional movement speed required to track down these backliners once the Xibalba Storm have to turn tail. But if the Storm don't actually turn at all and just fight their way back into it, there's not a lot of value Leon can really get from this hell, just because all of the value comes from they back up, we chase them down, we roll over the top of them. If they don't get that fight, if that's not how it draws up, it's pretty much all or nothing for their team composition.
Well, they tried a new look and now are sent immediately back to the drawing board to try and adapt here for game 2, which we're about to jump into game 2 right on the other side of this break. We'll see you in a minute.
stop going back to you. Back to you. Back to you. Back to you. I hope to stop going back to you.
Welcome back, SMITE fans, to the SMITE Challenger Circuit. We just watched a pretty back-and-forth game, if I do say so myself. Tyrian Weaver's still going up against the Xibalba Storm. I'm still Frog, and I'm still joined by Kaizo. And Kaizo, I don't know if I know exactly what to make of that game. Both teams had their positives in their own fights. Both teams got a Fire Giant, I felt like, at one point or another. Even that's technically not true. It was only that got the Fire Giant. I just lied to you. But it definitely feels like the Storm maybe want to look to open up their composition a little bit more. That team fight felt very one-dimensional, if that's the word for it.
It did, and we were actually talking during the break for those that weren't here for that, which is, I guess, everyone, that the hell just didn't feel necessary in that composition. Like, the team comp was very clearly, we double tank ult at the enemy, and then that's how we make our bread and butter in these team fights. And I'm just not sold on the fact that the movement speed and the healing that the hell provided was required to make that happen. I think that if you have another traditional jungler diving with those two, then it's probably a much bigger threat, because it looked like some of the damage checks required to get those kills, they were just barely coming up shy of the damage required, even with both of the Nikes diving at the same time. And if you have, like, I don't know, like a set or something that's jumping in there as well, I feel like that's probably even more oppressive. So ideally, Frog, I'd like to see Leon pivot to something a little bit more conventional.
Well, we'll see if they do pivot towards that conventional playstyle. Picks and bans ready for game number 2. And I gotta tell you, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to have a new idea on the meta, right? I mean, if we look at all of SMITE competitive history, those are potentially some of the most exciting times when people find new things in the meta. I keep thinking back to Season 5 Aurora Fenrir support, Hercules support, right? And they, it's completely disruptive. And I'm not sure the Storm found what they were looking for in that hell composition, right? But I don't think there's anything wrong with having the idea. I think there potentially is something wrong with not then trying to adapt that idea after you're met with that much clear resistance. I mean that game almost ended in 19 minutes.
Yeah, and the fact that the Storm do ban away both the Bakasura and the Hell tells me two very different pieces of information, Frog. The Bakasura ban tells me that they remembered that Grave is very good at Bakasura, and that's in fact one of the characters I think of when I think of Grave. And second, this Hell might have been picked up as a sort of pseudo-ban against the Tyrian Weavers. It's entirely possible that they grabbed it and didn't necessarily want it, but thought that they could get away with it because they didn't want to play against it. You only get so many options for gods that you can ban away, and I think that maybe grabbing it for Leon was, in a way, getting a 6th or 4th ban, depending on the stage of the bans that we were at. that could be the reason that they grabbed it and didn't look as comfortable on it. But now that they've taken it away, they've also stripped away the Yamoja, which Bolden was piloting and won't be available for the Tyrian Weavers. It's going to leave a whole lot of solo laners open.
Yeah, Herc and I'm totally blanking.
Guan Yu, Vomit?
No, Vomit. There it is. They were
there
both
he is.
banned
That's the guy.
last game, and now they are first picked. At least Vamana is first picked for the Storm, and notably they've switched it around. Right, they lose game one, they get to choose first pick or second pick. They opt to go for that first pick, and they completely revamp their bans. They don't keep any of the same bans. They banned 3 characters that they thought were impactful in game number 1, and they prioritized this Vamana. Meanwhile, the Tyrian Weavers go right back to it with the Horus and look to prioritize something else that was banned last time around, the Cirquette coming through, a different top 2 for the Weavers.
And Promise did look pretty good on this pick. I wouldn't say like star player potential. I don't think that it was like the genetics level of, oh my god, he picked Horus and did all this crazy stuff. It was a solid pick and he performed very well on it. So going back to it is very good. And I do think that it's worth bringing up the fact that the Storm grabbed the Vomit as opposed to the Hercules or the Guan Yu in that spot, because Vomit is the most flexible character of those 3. They're about comparable value, I would argue, but considering the fact that the Vomit can go to the jungle or the solo lane, depending on what matchups you end up with having to play around, I do think that that's probably the correct pick. And as well as this Cirquette, man, we've been seeing so much more of this character ever since she got that innate crit chance in the kit. It is a very scary thing to end up stacked up against, and with the performance that Grave had on a crit jungler in game number 1, it's going to be very exciting to see what he does with it on game 2.
Well, the next 2 picks come out, Ishtar and Nox for the Storm. If we were looking for a different look, we certainly found it. It is completely shifted on the side of the Storm. They let Ishtar through the bans. They didn't pick it at all last game. They let Hydrogen have it. This time they pick it top 3. And Nox completely not seen in game number 1. I think may have been banned out, but I may be making that up. It's very possible. Instead, they'll go towards the mage support as opposed to that Yamoja they had in game number 1. And no surprise, Hercules getting picked up before he would have surely gotten banned out in the second phase there. I think one thing, though, about the Cirquette, as good as she is, as much as she brings to a team fight, it is a very different role she has in the team fight compared to the Bakasura.
Yeah, the Bakasura has to go in and basically do what we saw at the end of that game there, where you get the big regurgitate off, you hit multiple members with those auto attacks, and basically change the landscape of the team fight in the course of a couple of seconds, whereas the Cirquette is much more of a pick-focused character. You really ideally want to get 1, maybe 2 members isolated and go on them so that you can either Cobra's Kiss one of them or 2 of them together and then burst through them with that crit Deathbane. Or we've also seen some like more facilitator Cirquette builds earlier this morning with the Stone of Binding and a Relic Dagger. It is a fairly flexible character, but definitely a vastly different look from the Bakasura, despite the fact that at least some of the items are going to be similar between the 2.
Yeah, probably a little bit of similarity at least, but we see the second phase of bans come through. Mages galore, 2 taken away from the Storm. Tyrian Weavers take away the Morgan as well. Don't want Briz back on that pick. I think that's understandable. And Guan Yu taken away as well, so they have to look at something different in the solo lane. And once again, I am not sure I was ready for this necessarily. Bats was banned away in the second phase last time around, and I feel like Storm, with these last 2 picks, have almost changed what they're looking to do in the team fight. This, though, seems like a great addition.
And it is worth pointing out as well that if I'm not mistaken, I think we've seen the Hun Bats from El Leon as well, and it looked very inconsistent, at times getting incredible ults off exactly where you need them, and at times going a little bit too deep and maybe isolating himself in the team fight to get a good Fear No Evil off. I do think that the Thoth is an interesting addition. It's a character that we've been seeing some of as a counter to the Marty Chorus, which is banned out by the Tyrian Weavers here. But maybe people beginning to realize that, long range, fairly safe damage is valuable, even if you're not counter picking, to be able to grab that one for yourself. So Briz piloting that one, a character that he's got some experience on as well. It's a very different look, like you said, Frog, but I think I like the pivot from the Storm here. They've got a lot of tools to play a very different style of game, and I think that that's exactly what the Doctor ordered here.
Well, with all 5 gods locked in for both sides, we are ready to jump into game number 2. Xibalba Storm looking to push it to 3. Tyrian Weavers looking to close it out with a clean 2-0 here in week number 3. And the first thing that I'm looking at as we load in here, right? We got a chance to talk about 9 of those 10 picks. Okay. You know the one pick that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
Tell me.
It's the Jingwei, and it's on hydrogen.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the montages that Hydrogen has posted with the Jingwei and the Hydra's crit build. I don't know if that's going to come out at the SCC level, but he certainly has the potential to make some waves here in his first week of gameplay with the Weavers.
He's definitely made some waves on Twitter, man. Like, the clips of this guy popping the Jingwei 2 and critting a guy for 18, 19, 2100 damage in one auto attack with that Hydra's Lament. There are people who did not sleep the night after they saw that clip. And it's definitely probably going to be on the minds of the Xibalba Storm here, if nothing else is something that, oh yeah, we have to be a little bit more careful about this pick, because they have a pretty different look in the dual lane here of Bolden on this Nox, who is a much more pick-focused character, versus the team fight presence that we saw from the Umoja early on is more action in the mid lane.
Yeah, teleport in, and this could be the kill. Braze dashes in to take an early first blood, and Grave will be forced to dash away there. I thought Elion was crazy on that teleport in, but he's just facilitating for Briz. An early kill there for the Storm.
And we'll see some trading in left, but the main action in mid, that is absolutely what the doctor ordered for the Xibalba Storm. In the games that they have looked good, that we've seen them get to play against the Sam for Soccer team as well, it's been a lot of these early fights in mid that are facilitated by Leon. He loves to go for that level 2, level 3 fight in the mid lane, pretty much regardless of what the matchup is and what the characters actually are. That seems to be his preferred time to get involved and try to get some kind of lead under him. I typically consider El Leon to be a very momentum-based player, and he's got some of it here.
Brave looking to make an impact here on the left side, avoids the silence and waiting for the dash here at a Bolden. Some good peel there from Bitey, and that is the most beautiful way you can disengage from that engagement there from the Storm. So they stay safe on the left-hand side after losing the blink from Grave. So as much momentum potentially as Elion has, that first unsuccessful gank there from Grave. I mean, already I feel like Cirquet is by default a more active character, but I mean, a lot of that is pre-level 5, and Elion is already halfway there.
And he's almost got this Jotun's Wrath finished as well, now going into that heavy mace. As soon as he hits level 5 and gets some of that cooldown under his belt, he can look to get involved. It is true, though, Frog, that Grave, pre-level 5, a much better character at finding early aggression on this Cirquet. The Deathbane at level 1 doing, what, like 120 base damage or something like that is bananas for most characters in the jungle, and something that you do not want to have to deal with if you're something like Briz on this Thoth. He can definitely get involved, but nobody's going to give him the chance to do so, man. It's been fairly quiet in the solo lane so far. Not likely to be one where we see a whole bunch of solo kills with a Hercules over there. It's really either you mess up against the Hercules or nothing happens in that lane. Instead, all the attention's on this left side.
Yeah, and Elion is making it known that he is here to fight. Not level 5 quite yet, but looking to steal away this purple buff all the same, and they will be successful in doing so. Hydrogen and Promise will lose out on that XP on the left-hand side of the map. But, I mean, you see that pressure coming through. I think no surprise. You have a little pressure against the Jingwei. I think everybody's sort of expecting that to go the way of the Ishtar, at least early on in this one. And already they've established for themselves about 1,000 gold lead, right? And now I'm thinking about how they really want to hold on to that, right? It's certainly going to be a little bit easier once the Hunbats hits level 5, but I'm immediately looking towards where they're going to try and prioritize this pressure. Do you think they keep trying to focus on this left-hand side of the map, or maybe they're going to facilitate the Vamana?
Well, we're going to have to hold that thought here as more aggression on the left. Grave, at least in the vicinity, but not able to get any aggression there. We have seen, if you watched the Gilded Gladiators versus Camelot King set a little bit earlier, Variety on this Hercules was prone to getting bullied by a very similar composition to what the Xibalba Storm have here. It was a Nox support, it was a high CC jungler as well, it was a Bakasura that time around, not this Hunbats, but still the same gist of you use cooldowns and the Hercules does not get to play. Could look to potentially bully out the solo lane. It would be worthwhile, Frog, because a fed Vomit is a scary Vomit. Actually, any Vomit right now is a scary Vomit, but a scarier Vomit, perhaps. So at least worthwhile if you want to put your attention over there. Both of them going for this Golden Blade start that I think makes for a bit more volatile laning phase, considering neither one of them really have any protections to speak of, save for just the little bit they'll get from Warrior's Axe. Otherwise, I mean, we're looking at team fight stage, we're looking at these objective fights, and I'd like to see Elyon get involved earlier.
Blink in from Grave gets the ultimate early onto the Hunbats, and he'll dash in to try and get a little bit more of that damage, but now nothing is there to follow up, and a beautiful Fear No Evil will slow down the engage. The Weaver's not able to punish the Hunbats. They may be able to punish Bolden, though he does not get to use that escape. Was looking for a member of his team to dash into, but it'll be the first kill back from the Weaver's answer down to the sport.
Looked like Brendan didn't actually have that Shadow Step available because he had people in range, but now we'll see this blue buff invade here from Grave, who is 1 HP, will jump over the wall at least to safety, but they just punished the Nox for being a little bit too far out of position trying to help out. It was an incredible Fear No Evil on the Horus ult coming in from Elyon to save his own life, but perhaps baited Bolden a little bit too far forward, makes him feel like he needs to get involved there to try to protect his backliner, or at least his squishy in this jungle role that Elyon's going to fulfill there. And the aggression from Grave doesn't pay out how he necessarily drew it up. I don't think that, you know, he blink ults Elyon at the back camps and expects, oh, I'm going to kill Bolden on the Nox as a result of this, but at least does get something for his trouble.
Oh no, Slash taken out, getting soloed. You were right about volatility in the solo lane. Neither of them having any defense at this stage outside of the starter item. It will be the solo kill coming through for Ramakami onto the Vamana. I mean, we talked about a scary Vamana a little bit earlier on, right? If he gets ahead, if he gets fed a little bit. I'm also thinking Hercules is pretty scary, right? Like, I don't want to deal with a fed Hercules in my backline either, and especially I'm not seeing any anti-heal yet. There's no Divine, there's no Brawlers first out of either item. I mean, he may be being set up for having a diligent role in these team fights.
They've got a little bit of time before they start to need those cooldowns, though. If Ramakami's rotating 7 minutes into the game, something interesting is going on, Frog.
Oh, Grave just doesn't get to play the game, and Bolden is immediately turned around on as well. He'll pop out of the Shadow Step to get that ultimate onto 3, and everybody has rotated over. No Fear No Evil to save his life this time around. And Hydrogen was there to clean things up if Tripno didn't grab it, and it may be him to clean things up onto Slash. If he's not careful, it will be a kill for the ADC, making the rotation towards mid early on. For all of the work they do to get one pick, it is an immediate answer back. 3 down. Weavers take the board.
What kind of weird ranked fight was that, Frog? It is 7 minutes into this game, and we had 9 players fighting over a right middle camp on this map. I want to make it very clear that other than they just wanted to fight, there wasn't really anything to fight over. We'll see a fight on the right-hand side for this blue buff invade, but looks like it should be actually the Vomit that ends up coming on the better end of that. Grave gonna have to back up here with Ramakami, so Elyon will successfully secure that buff for them, but it's just a little surprising that they're willing to invest that heavily into that, because that entire time it was Bitey on the left-hand side, uncontested, just farming his brains out, getting every drop of farm on the map that he could, and because of that, kills mean so little at this stage of the game. There's so little you can get off of the back of them because no neutral objective that you can really contest around where that fight took place. It's actually the Xibalba Storm that kind of creeped their way back toward parity with the Tyrian Weavers, despite the fact that the Weavers hand over fist come out on top of that fight.
Yeah, I mean, 3 kills to 1, obviously, going to be favoring them. Bitey will be forced to dash away on this left-hand side, and I will say for all the talking that we did about how do they try and hold on to their early lead after getting first blood onto Elion, we gave him some momentum. Certainly it felt like he had momentum when he dropped the Fear No Evil solo onto Grave, but I mean that's gotta also do something for you mentally, right? If you're Elion, you get a pick successfully with the help of your team, and immediately you get hard punished. You're like, oh, you used 2 ultimates here? No, you don't get to play the game. We're going to rotate our ADC over at 7 minutes into the game, right? So, I mean, just mentally, I'm thinking if I'm Elion, I'm already like, okay, maybe I'm holding on to that Fear No Evil for a little bit more team fight value next time.
Or at least waiting to get some more information, perhaps, to deal with that fight. Because I don't think that they necessarily knew that Remakami was rotating. I don't think they knew that Hydrogen was flying into that fight. The call out from Bitey in that spot probably sounds like Jing Wei is backing. She could rotate to that fight, is about as confident as you'll likely hear that come from Bitey on this Ishtar. But nobody really thought that this kind of thing was going to happen.
What is this? Slash is all the way up at the enemy Phoenix, and sure enough, he gets turned around on. I don't know what he thought was going to happen. Like, that's just Smite 101. I'm going to respond to the soul laner that is split pushing my Phoenix. This maybe takes it a little farther, though, to the skies. Brings 4 members over towards the Gold Fury. It's only Bolden here within range. Look for the ultimate, though. They take it away. The Xibalba Storm, despite getting picked at the enemy Phoenix, not only take away the Gold Fury, they're almost so close to finding the pick. Tripno will fall. In addition, they'll grab the objective. They'll grab the 1-for-1. They'll grab the 2-for-1 as Elion picks up a double, and on a dime, the Storm are back in the lead.
Yeah, pivot on another level there on these graphs as the Storm get the strangest value from Slash just outright killing himself to that Phoenix proxy that I've ever seen. That should every single day of the week be the Weavers coming out on top of that. They didn't have to try to pull that Gold Fury. They also didn't have to respond that heavily to the proxy farming from Slash, but they try both. And, you know, every time we do these objectives, Frog, the thing that should be on your mind is, what do each of these teams want to do around an objective? Tyrian Weavers have pretty good shred for it. Agni does good, consistent DPS. But the burst option is always going to favor the Xibalba Storm. That final judgment ultimate from the Thoth, Briz is always going to have the single largest instance of damage on the map, which means that every time that the Weavers pull one of these objectives, they're either coin flipping them at best or finding wherever Briz is at and trying to get him out of that one. That time around, they had no vision on where the Thoth was. Nobody was dealing with him in any capacity. Briz gets to step up, make the hero play, and end up putting the Xibalba Storm pretty comfortably in the lead now.
Now, as you take a step back, we will, as you say, look at the lead, right? 3,000 in the lead for the Xibalba Storm, only at around 12.5 minutes here. And sure enough, there is still a neutral objective they can look at in the form of the Pyromancer on this right-hand side, and 4 members will be on this right-hand side if they do want to look at it. But as we sort of take a step back and maybe look at the builds, we won't even get a chance to do that, though, as Bolden and Elion pushing up against 2. And everybody's grouped up here to the skies. May loop them in, Grave with the blink in, and it's just going to be an opportunity to turn around on to that next neutral objective. That rotation over from Hydrogen is value. They'll grab the Pyromancer. Everybody walks away clean.
Beads forced out on Briz there is pretty critical, making sure that he can't step up and make another hero play on that objective. And Remakami once again rotating over. He's fairly far ahead, at least in gold, maybe not in levels of this bomb, and actually a little bit XP behind. Not that that'll ever show up on these graphs, but Remakami once again, the solo frontliner that they needed to make sure nobody can step forward after Grave gets that relic stripped off of Briz. And they do manage to answer back, Frog, but again, even though the Weavers are asking all the questions and are the ones that are creating these fights and making the Xibalba Storm react, they're still not in the lead or really even closing the gap. I don't think that after we saw that spike go in the favor of the Tyrian Weavers, they ended up really on top of that trade, because the Xibalba Storm, despite the fact they don't get the objective, they didn't have to stop really farming at any point during that. Bitey's continuing to split push completely unbothered by all of these rotations coming out from Hydrogen. It's a pretty comfortable spot for the Xibalba Storm to be in.
Yeah, I think if the Weavers do want to try and close this gold lead back up, I've seen this story before. I know how it ends, but we're not there. It's not that significant quite yet. He's only past the tier 1. I think if the Weavers are going to try and answer back, right, and try and close this gold lead, it has to be around the next spawn of the neutral objective that went so poorly in the first place. And sure enough, we're about to see that gold Fury, this time an Oni Fury, spawn. And all 5 members, no surprise, of the Tyrian Weavers here to try and redeem themselves. And they're here way before the Storm are.
Yeah, Slash is only now backing, has the teleport available, but going to take him a little bit to get here. Could be an opportunity for the Weavers to step in immediately, but instead going to get mid-priority by farming those waves out, see if they can potentially catch one of the members stepping up to this Gold Fury pit. And because Briz has to rotate over and clear that mid-wave alongside Elion, it does open up the Fire Giant pit, but looks like instead the Weavers are content to have forced the rotation from the Xibalba Storm and at least slowed down some of the farming that they were doing. They're going to instead reset and look for it, at least in a couple more seconds here.
Now, how do these fights change, right? I mean, last time it wasn't a super organized fight. They got 1 pick. They were like, we're going to dedicate to this. They brought to the skies, and they landed 4 members on the Oni Fury, and they got out secured, right? It didn't feel like they had a chance to even engage on their own terms. What are they looking for in terms of an engage to have this go right this time around?
Well, they have to avoid a Hunbat's ult, which could be coming here.
Oh no, all the way in the back, Elion finds Tripno and will burn the relics and burn his life. A killing spree for the Hunbats, and a double pullback in will keep the Xibalba Storm on the back foot. They get 1 pick, but the health bars are so low for the Weavers, and they find Grave pushed up alone. It's Slash by himself, zoning away 3 members in the back, and Bolden gets his soul lane out of there with the silence as well. 2 clean picks for the Storm, and that looks to be an Oni Fury unless Promise has anything to say about it. He forces everybody is off. They're backing. They don't want... I'm confused. I don't know. I feel like they should have gone for the objective.
Yeah, no ult available for Briz makes that a little bit more tricky of a pull for them to do, not to mention full health bars on both Hydrogen and Remakami following behind Promise there. Means that would have been a difficult fight for them, if nothing else, because Bolden was very low. Now they're actually going to try to turn it around onto Slash here.
Yeah, he pops the Thorns and will trade a little bit of damage back, but it's the chase here. Jingwei ultimate aggressively as Hydrogen was looking to finish that one off, but it'll just make the space for them to turn around, look at the Pyromancer. Once again, the Weavers secure that one out, and Remakami is now the other solo laner getting poked. He'll heal back up at least a little bit before being forced back off this objective. But now as Slash is coming back towards this right side of the map, everybody from the Weavers feels content to back off a little bit. This may be the new window here, at least for this tier 1.
Yeah, they're going to likely grab this one, and could be an opportunity for them to rotate back toward the Oni Fury, and it looks like that's where they're going to be turning their attention. Don't forget, Elion didn't use the blink in that last engagement, just got a very good flank pretty deep in the jungle, so does still have that one available. That could be a pretty critical component of a fight if it were to happen, Frog, but because not a lot of resources to work with for the Tyrian Weavers, a bit of a relic graveyard for them, missing some pretty crucial resources that they would ideally like to have in these fights, they're instead just going to give that one up. But the lead continues to build for the Xibalba Storm, now growing toward almost 5,000 gold, and the Tyrian Weavers just seem to have lost all their momentum. They were playing very aggressively, forcing the issue early on, but because the gold didn't develop in their favor, the XP also significantly in favor of the Xibalba Storm here, to the tune of about 3 levels, call it 2 in mid, and a couple more distributed on some other roles as well. It's a very difficult place for the Weavers to find themselves, considering the fact that Hunbat's ult only going to get better with time, and it's going to be increasingly difficult for them to deal with Slash. The tankier he gets, that damage output isn't going anywhere, but it's going to be much more difficult to bring him down and require a lot more significant investment further on.
Now, Kaiser, I have a big question for you. Okay?
Ask it.
we talked earlier about hydrogen and about the Jingwei. And now we're familiar with it. Not everybody has seen those YouTube videos though.
Yes.
So he's pretty clearly building into it.
He's
pretty clearly building into it. So
he's going.
I'm hoping you can talk to me as Grave, I think, will just fall,
Murdered,
unfortunately. Yes. He's just off the map, unfortunately for him. But talk to me about what this Jingwei build does and how it differs in team fights from a standard hunter build.
So you'll notice, Frog, very immediately upon looking at this build, there is no attack speed in this build from Hydrogen. There is, well, okay, Bloodforge, I'll give you that one. But past that point, there's no real attack speed to be working with here. All of these items give you a large amount of power, some crit damage, and some crit chance. And the entire purpose of this build is that you go Death's Temper once you hit level 20 to give you even more increased auto attack damage when coupled with these crit items. Then you pop that Explosive Bolt second ability and you just try to one-shot someone. And it will do a large chunk of damage to these frontliners, but perhaps more importantly, if Hydrogen ever encounters Briz or Bitey in these fights and can get an auto attack onto them, we're talking upwards of 1,500 plus damage that one auto is capable of doing, and it gives him a very realistic ability to turn around the damage onto Elion.
Tripno forced to use both of the relics there early on, and Elion will have his feeds forced out as well. Turned around on, though, and it may be Grave looking to finish off the damage. Won't have enough, though, to take down the jungler there. Instead, it'll just be a couple of relics traded back and forth, perhaps in preparation for this looming Fire Giant fight on the right-hand side of the map. But I think you're absolutely right? We've already seen some aggression, right? We watched Hydrogen use the Jingwei ultimate, typically used as one of the best safety tools in the game. I think we've only seen him use it aggressively so far. I don't think he's used it for safety one single time, and granted, he hasn't been under the most pressure in the game, but we'll have to see how that changes and how that works to their benefit around fights like these. This will be the third Pyromancer pull for the Weavers, and the Xibalba Storm not necessarily in range to try and defend that, so it'll be a successful. And now they're holding on to, I'm not sure where they use the other Runic Bomb, but 2 Runic Bombs here, which has, the potential to out-secure even a Final Judgment if they play their cards right on this Fire Giant.
And several thousand true damage for them to work with if they can coordinate that pretty effectively. It's a whole lot of buttons for them to be pushing. Promise has got to do it, but gonna have to step up here and try to use them.
Gonna force their hand. Fire Giant taken down just a little bit, but the Storm want the fight, and they'll find it early on.
Goodbye.
A 3-man Fear No Evil forces Remikami away from his team, and they'll take down the Soul Laner as a result. But a lot of the resources get burned. It's only the Final Judgment that gets held on to by Briz. So they'll get a pick, but maybe not as much as they want, and they have to back off.
It's at least something, though, for their troubles. If they don't get anything there, hang on. Bitey actually getting murdered here.
Yeah, Grave blinks in, but it's turned around on Tripno. Will trade out Bitey, but Briz takes 2 in trade. He'll find himself a double kill, and 3 are suddenly off the board there for the Tyrian Weavers. If nothing else, this should open up the window towards the Gold Fury. I think still not enough of an advantage to look at the Fire Giant, but I mean, it feels like these teams have been very content to trade out Pyromancers and Gold Furies for pretty much the entire 23 minutes here. Xibalba Storm have held on to this lead for a while, but have not done a ton to make it that much bigger.
They're just working their way toward level 20, man. All of these characters are significantly better the later the game goes on. I do think you can say the same for most of the Tyrian Weavers. I would argue that the only one that I think falls off even slightly is Grave on this Serket, but with how dominant Serket has been, man, that's still even a question mark in my mind if that's the case. It's really just the fact that they want all of their buttons available, all of their items online before they really start to gamble the course of this game. Because if they're going to take a convincing fight, they're going to have to risk potentially losing it, which means that they could gamble this lead that they've developed for themselves over the last 23 minutes. I don't hate the fact that they're playing it much slower, being much more methodical about it, because don't forget, they have lost every single game, or excuse me, every single set that they've played so far in 2-1 fashion. I want to make sure that they can end this one in a pretty comfortable spot here, especially with their backs up against the wall, Frog. I understand why they want to play this a little bit more carefully.
Leon trades out Fear No Evil for a 170-second beads timer on Trip now. That seems like a consistent theme. We've seen the last 3 beads timers and partially Aegis timers as well on that sort of trade out, and that's going to at least make the room for them to try and find the pick onto Trip now if he steps up too far here onto this Fire Giant. But it's actually the Weavers with the advantage in positioning around this objective. They're going to push onto it, just a little bit of a bait off the bat, and Slash will back off as the Tyrian Weavers looking for a fight have not found one. But this seems odd to try and push the lead right after your mid laners lost their beads.
Yeah, but they do at least have a couple of cooldowns to work with. I mean, they've got no longer a teleport available, still beads and Aegis forced off of Vitey. They've got some cooldowns of their own to play around with, but now that Grave has also lost the bubble, it's very unlikely that this is going to be a fight that the Tyrian Weavers are willing to take. It's going to be a lot more jockeying for positioning here as we begin the infamous Fire Giant dance here, Frog, and it's going to come from one of these teams getting a good pick to start off. Both of them looking for some kind of relevant engage onto a frontliner, be that Ramakami getting a good pull like this.
Yeah, Bolden will be the target off the bat, but Promise is immediately the one turned around on a 3-man Fear No Evil right as it comes off of cooldown, and the support for the Weavers and the solo laner both taken down. No more tanks now for the Red Squad, and I think that's going to seal the deal. Nobody wants to step up to a Fire Giant defense without their frontliners. And the Xibalba Storm, like you said, looking for a pick, and as soon as that Fear No Evil comes off cooldown, Leon finds value.
And that's exactly how you have to play this Hunbats, man. You are a character only when you have your ultimate ability. Otherwise, you are a mobile ward on this map compared to what Grave is going to be doing on the Circuit. But every time that Fear No Evil is available, it has the chance to change the landscape of the game. And Leon definitely does it there, finding a beautiful ult, as you said, to separate that team fight and make sure that they get all the value they need out of that cooldown. And once again, put themselves in a even more dominant position than before, Frog. Like, they were a couple thousand up, but now 9,000 gold in the lead with a fresh Fire Giant. You can start to think about sieging these Phoenixes down. You're definitely looking to break the base on this siege. If you only get these towers, it's probably not going to be exactly what you're looking for, but if they can get one Phoenix down, probably going to be counting that one worth and then resetting and looking for this next EFG.
Hydrogen just does not care if he has minions. He'll push down that tier 1 on the right-hand side. And I think you're absolutely right? If I'm the Tyrian Weavers, I feel like I might defend tier 2s, but it's much more pressure focused on keeping these Phoenixes alive, because that's what's going to allow me to defend the next Fire Giant, right? And make sure I'm there with my relics available ready for the Fear No Evil. But the Xibalba Storm will be positioned on this left-hand side. Only 3 members, though, right now, as Leon will take his time grabbing the speed buff before heading over to this left-hand side. I mean, if you're the Weavers, are you just prioritizing the Phoenixes, or are you trying to put up a defense under the tier 2s?
You want to go for some kind of soft defense, ideally, but it's much more difficult when you have something like the Blink Hunbats ult to worry about. The idea that you would like to have is you step up close to these birds, at least toward the back of them, and try to slow down the siege from the storm, make them step a bit more trepidatiously, but when you can be blink engaged on at a moment's notice, you don't really get that chance anymore. So the Xibalba Storm instead just going to take that tier 2 tower and left for free. At least look like they wanted to try to potentially siege this Phoenix down, but with Primal Fury still on the map, still a tier 2 tower and right, looks like they're going to continue to play this incredibly safely, Frog, taking no risks whatsoever with this Fire Giant here.
Well, I guess it's, which risk do you want to take, right? Because you could take the risk, right, that you try and push down this left side Phoenix, and it absolutely is a risk. You have to play your cards right. You have to win a 5-on-5 under the bird. But is that really the worst risk to take compared to taking a 5-on-5 now with the Tyrian Weavers further along in their builds? You've got this upgraded starter for Hydrogen. You're about to have another crit on him online for him. You've got upgraded starters, in fact, across the board for all of the members, which they did not have the last time around when they fought around the Fire Giant. I mean, is this really the risk you want to take? Certainly this sets up for yet another 5v5 around the Fire Giant.
I would think that you're barking up the right tree there, Frog. I mean, like I said, you would have wanted to break the base there if you're the Xibalba Storm, and anything shy of that is a little bit of a disappointment as far as I'm concerned, just because, as you mentioned, you had a very commanding gold lead and some pretty relevant XP gaps as well, where players weren't ticked over to level 20. Those starters in particular not being available is so crucial for the Tyrian Weavers to now have those online, gives them the tools required to at least combat the Xibalba Storm around this Fire Giant. It is going to be EFG, and they do have still a pretty sizable lead, but this is going to be a much bigger risk for them now.
Golden will have that bubble popped as Remakami just forces the CC onto him. Promise back there. I thought that may have been a window for the Storm to try and find something, but right now they're just positioned around the Fire Giant. Last time it was this Hun Bat's ultimate. This time it might be Bolden who gets caught out. A little bit of good pullback from Remakami, takes the support down to half HP, and it's the Pyromancer that gets picked up by Bitey during that time. It will be the Weavers ultimately taking that one.
Grave.
But a blink in from Grave forces the beads from Elion, and he just gets out instantly. It's this in and out, this push-pull mentality, and the Weavers have poked them down pretty significantly.
And Xibalba Storm still have all the relevant cooldowns, like the Blink, Fear No Evil!
He finds it once again, a 2 or 3 man ultimate every single time, and it nets them to make it 3 as they take down Grave, take down Remakami. It's 4 total. Tripno and Hydrogen added to the list. It's only Promise left alive on the map. This would have to be a miracle defense from the Horus as Slash, Elion, Briz, Bolden, they've got everything in the tank to push down, including a minion wave. They're gonna go right to the Titan. Promise is standing still, and they will take game number 2. We're going to 3.
And Xibalba Storm just take that game by the horns there at the end, because that should have been a fight where the Weavers could have backed up, but they just stay a little bit too long. I mean, I like the idea of Grave going in there, forcing the beads off of Elion, preventing him from playing aggressively. That game was completely won or lost based on what value Elion got on the Hunbat's ult. Yeah. But after that, the Weavers just stick around in a very weird spot, Frog. Like they were within Blink, Fear No Evil range when the only threat to them losing that game in that one particular moment was getting Blink, Fear No Evil. I'd like to see them either, be more ready for that or perhaps back up a little bit further. But because they gave Elion the opportunity he was looking for, he's not going to pass up on it, man. He was hitting on those Hunbat's ults.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I was saying last game, like, I was criticizing the Hell. Hell was doing its job, but I don't want Elion on a Hell. I want Elion on the play-making god, the Najas, the Hunbatses of the world, because that is just what he can bring to the table. It almost felt like the last 3 fights of the game, he is single-handedly, he gets damage from his teammates, he's getting help, he doesn't even have the most kills on his team, but it feels, if you can say single-handedly winning a team fight, like that's as close as you're gonna get.
Yeah, just shy of, Grave, Blink, Bakasura ulting and killing the entire enemy team with the Regurgitate. That's pretty much as close as you're going to get. And I totally agree that the adaptation of putting Elion on something like this Hunbats instead of the Hell is absolutely what I would like to see this Tyrian Weavers team continue to do moving forward. Every time that we see Elion play something that doesn't play with momentum, with the opportunity to change the landscape of the team fight in the course of several seconds with only his own input, I have not loved the look of the Tyrian Weavers. This is a team that, in my eyes, has to have good strength in the jungle in order to win these games. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's nothing wrong with having a star player that you rely on, especially when it's a guy that performs as consistently as Elion. But that does mean that you have to give him what he is capable of doing that on. You got to feed the hot hand, give him a pick where he can make that kind of change. And the Hunbats is definitely that character.
Yeah, I like the look. I like the adaptation into game 2. And now, if I'm the Weavers, I have to bounce back and try and bring it to a game number 3. Both teams feeling like they're on the edge of victory. And we'll have to see who bounces back into that game 3 right after this break.
have to stop going back to you. Back to you. Back to you. Back to you.
I have to stop going back to you. Back to you.
Back to you. Back to you.
Welcome in, Smite fans, back to the Smite Challenger Circuit. We're on the North American side of things, and we are watching the Xibalba Storm take it to the Tyrian Weavers. I'm still Frog. I'm still joined by Kaizo, and we have a Game 3 on our hands. You know why this is particularly exciting, Kaizo?
I do.
The Xibalba Storm have gotten reverse swept in Week 1 and in Week 2. And here in Week 3, they've got a chance to be the reverse sweepers. That didn't sound as good as I thought it would sound coming out of my mouth, but I'm going to stick with it.
I still liked it either way, man. It was still good. And it is worth noting that you are correct. This is their first chance to not get reverse swept just because they won the second game this time around as opposed to winning the first game. So maybe this is just their thing, that every set is a reverse sweep, and they're only now realizing that means they have to win game 2 and not game 1. Because game 2 here looked really good for them. I mean, ever since they got that very small lead early on, it has been easy pickings for them with this Hunbatsold. And I think that if you don't ban this one, if you're the Tyrian Weavers, it is a mistake in my eyes. Because El Leon needs to play a character that he's very comfortable on, that he's on with, so to speak. And I would definitely say that tonight, Hunbats is that character for him.
Well, hopefully they've got the formula in the bag ready to go into here to picks and bans for game number 3. And I think I'm hoping they can do it on not just the Hunbats, because I got to tell you, if I'm the Tyrian Weavers, I think that's the first thing I'm doing is banning away the Hunbats, right? That seemed to be the primary impact pick. And they may look to ban out just El Leon in general. This Naja and maybe the Hunbats in addition, maybe a couple other junglers, but this time it's the Tyrian Weavers back in the first pick position. That's where they won game 1 from.
And I do think that banning out El Leon might not actually be the worst idea. They're going to put some attention to Slash as well. But for my money, Frog, as long as Leon is the guy that is consistently driving this Xibalba Storm team and causing them to win these games, I want to take as many toys away from him as possible. Make him prove that either he can reach deep into the God pool and make something happen even after you take away those picks that he's been playing consistently, things like the Hunbats, the Naja, the Set, stuff like that, or make somebody else step up. The Storm have looked good across all 5 roles, but no one else other than El Leon, in my eyes, has really stood out to me as this guy was the reason that this game was won. I think that it would be worthwhile to force the Storm to pick somebody else to step up and carry them to the game victory other than El Leon.
Through my leadership, we will secure
once
victory.
again shift wildly for the Storm, right? I mean, we had them somewhat close to this in game number 1, and then they shifted for game 2, and now they've shifted again for game 3. We've got the Baka and the Emoja back available, both prominent picks in game number 1, but the Tyrian Weavers see everything up, and they go once again back to this forest, which I am confused by. It's a good pick. Promise is playing it well, but I don't know if it's getting
or you
first
will
pick
fall
value.
beneath the rising waters.
I would agree with that, Frog, and I think that the way you said it is perfect as well, because Promise has looked good on this character. There's no question about that. The question is, has he looked first pick of the draft good on the Horus? And I don't know if I'm sold on that. I mean, I would rather pick Graves Bakasura there, but maybe they don't think that El Leon is going to pick it. Maybe they don't want it that early into the draft. Or maybe they just want to go for a different look altogether, and the Horus is more of a stall tactic to see what the Xibalba Storm grab. But I don't think it's shocking anybody that Brendan's Bolt is going back to this Yemoja in the support role, and that now they're giving this Guan Yu over to Slash, because already that Hercules and that Vomit both taken off the table. I think that the Storm kind of got exactly what they were looking for, and the Horus first pick doesn't really seem to have bothered them in any way.
Yeah, they go back to the Merlin and the Ishtar for the Weavers, and on the other side, you're absolutely right? Hercules and Vamana once again taken off the table, so they'll pick number 3 on that list and go towards this Guan Yu, force the Weavers into a different look. As once again, they get their Thoth pick, right? And we saw Briz on this Morgan in game number 1. He's even banned away in game number 2. They didn't want him back on that pick. This time he chooses, before any mid laners get banned away, to go back to this Thoth. And after being top damage in game number 3, I don't hate going back to that pick, especially with such a strong frontline top 2, a lot of space being made for this Thoth.
Yeah, Briz did look really good on this pick, and I do think that it is probably the best place to pick it, if not in the bottom 2, is the 6th overall pick in the draft, because you can take your pick of junglers that Thoth has bad matchups into, because Thoth is a character that has a lot of bad matchups, but has a lot of positive matchups as well. I think that the Dajian, more famously, perhaps the Fenrir, are things that he struggles with, things that force him to use the beads very consistently, and things that can follow him through that dash are typically the characters that you want to avoid matching into when you pick that Thoth. So you would ideally like to get it either after you've already had the chance to ban those away, or when you're the 6th pick before the ban phase, you know that they can't grab them anyway. It's just about the best place to be picking him up.
Well, after the bans come through, they will notably ban out that Hun Bats. I'm a little bit surprised, admittedly, that the Storm don't go back to that pick after how impactful it was, and instead grab their tanks and the Thoth, but they'll hold on for Elion's pick to be that 5th and final one for the Storm, and I think that's smart. They want to grab something that can engage in the light of what we're about to see the Tyrian Weavers pick their dive. And sure enough, they go back to the Bakasura and likely a facilitating solo laner. Or not.
Or not is right. That is not a facilitating solo laner. That's a different thing entirely. That's a Sylvanas, and not a character that we see a whole lot of, because Sylvanas is a lot of good dual lane pressure, but shield buff is good, and you like to have that, but I don't think that it warrants picking something that's so potentially bad, I guess, is the best way, is probably the worst way I can put it, but what I'm getting at is this guy can get bullied pretty early on and pretty consistently by some good pressure, by something with good crowd control, and something that can take him out from a distance. A lot of lack of mobility is the problem for the Sylvanas, so I'm surprised that they elect to go for it. Across the way, Frog, you look shocked to see this Nike again.
Yeah, I am. I think this time I feel a little bit more confident in where it's going. I would hope that it is going back towards the jungle as opposed to where it went in towards the solo lane in game number 1, but I don't even have to make that guess because we're ready for game number 3. Tyrian Weavers and the Xibalba Storm both looking to close it out and grab a win here in week number 3. And the first thing I'm looking at, it is indeed the Nike jungle, which makes me feel almost better about the game 1 draft. Like maybe they were ready to flex it and they what if they didn't trade? You know what I mean? Like what if it had been like just a mistake and they lose game 1 because of that? But no, I mean it is the Nike for Elion, and as much as it's somewhere in between. It's certainly not as supportive as the Hell. It's certainly not the one-dimensional like hard engage that the Fear No Evil is, but it gives them a little bit of wiggle room.
And usually characters that are a little bit tanky are more well inclined to dive mages. I don't think that I would necessarily give that to Nike. I think that her tools are much better suited to diving auto attack centered characters, so likely going to be better at taking out Hydrogen on this Ishtar as opposed to really diving Tripno. I mean, it is entirely possible that a stray Sentinel of Zeus slowing Tripno for the foreseeable future, probably like it's like 4 or 5 seconds or something like that on that Nike ult, would be a very big problem for something like the Merlin doesn't have the innate CC immunity in the kit. But considering the fact that, you know, he can distance himself pretty well with that flicker, it's probably got to be some kind of blink engage from Elion if he actually wants to get to where Tripno's standing. I think Hydrogen is a much more likely target for that aggression from Elion, especially considering, you know, got the disarm, got the, or excuse me, not the dis, yeah, a disarm. I'm all over the place, Frog, but good at diving ADCs. That's what we're getting at here.
Yeah, definitely has some of the pressure. Oh my goodness! That is not what I expected. I mean, I was about to point us in the direction that We had seen this Horus first pick over in the support role both games. Finally, Promise switches it up, goes towards the Sylvanas. What are the strengths of this Horus in the solo lane? And he maybe has a good matchup in Guan Yu. I'm not sure I predicted a sub 2-minute solo kill from the Horus, though.
And that's not a matchup-based thing that the Horus is getting that kill. That is absolutely a mistake by Slash. You don't really get the pre-2-minute solo kill unless the enemy does something wrong. And it's likely to be Slash, overextending a little bit too far, underestimating the burst damage from Remakami, because with that fracture into the updraft combo, that's a lot of time that if you were tanking minion wave, you don't get to walk away from that. You have to take all of that damage with your protection shredded while you're being CC chained. And it is always worth pointing out, anytime you get a character that has a ability that can cancel Tallow Assault, that is always worthwhile in the laning phase against a Guan Yu. That's his main boxing tool, that's the main clear tool he would like to be maxing, and because Remakami can use that fracture ability to stun out the Tallow Assault and prevent it from getting full value, it is a lot better for him.
DC coming through again on Slash, and Grave puts him down once again, right as the blue buff spawns. Luckily, Elion does seem to be at that cooldown on time. So he will lose the farm from the blue buff, but he won't lose the blue buff itself. He'll grab that on his way back to lane. But certainly no questions about where the early focus of the Tyrian Weavers are going to be on the right-hand side.
And we got to see it, the fabled pre-level 5 Bakasura gank. I've never seen somebody think so hard about a blink takedown in my entire life, but you could see the cogs turning in Graves' head when he made that rotation over to help out Remakami get a second solo kill, or I guess a second kill in general, onto this Slash Guan Yu. This is going to be pretty important for them, too, because Horus can be a lane bully with a lead, but ordinarily, this would be a pretty nothing lane, I would think. And Slash is a character that's prone to getting bullied out. He needs those blue buffs, so that's a target for your aggression. He also, pre-level 5, doesn't have the best safety tools available. Really just that quick burst movement from that dash that, as you can see there on your screen, the Tyrian Weavers just wait out and then use all their abilities after the fact. Still a very reasonable target for any further aggression that the Tyrian Weavers would like to put on.
Golden by himself, getting a little bit of poke on a hydrogen on this left-hand side as Remakami and Slash continue to duke it out in the solo lane. And I think that, because I do want to bring it over here towards the dual lane, right? As much as we talk about Horus on the right-hand side, he's already off to a hot start. He's got a kill and an assist under his belt. It forces a change from Promise. And the change that he opts for with everything available in that last pick, there was a Nox opportunity, there was an Aphrodite opportunity, there was, like, he could have gone for a mage, he could have gone for a totally different support. He chooses this immobile pick for the Sylvanas. It got the lane pressure, they got him ahead a little bit in dual lane. Now it's got to rotate, and I'm not sure I'm sold on this support pick.
I am in the same conversation with you, Frog, and I'd love to live in Promise's head right now to find out what he's thinking about that pick, but we'll have to hold that thought as Slash once again gets more aggression onto him, but Cavalry Charge will get him out of danger for the time being. I feel like Promise is prone to getting bullied by these Umoja walls, man, but we'll have to think about that later, as once again it's this blue buff invade.
Yeah, this time Grave is here earlier, just so he makes it in time for this blue buff to spawn. And in fact, Promise has rotated over as well to make this a little bit of a 3v2. Elion will be chunked down to half HP, and I don't think anybody's in a position to fight against this blue buff. And we do see that focus continuing, right? This time they don't have to get a kill onto Slash. They put him down 2 times already. They've got the level lead that they want. I mean, did the Xibalba Storm answer back against this? Are you sending more people to defend the next blue buff spawn?
You can probably count on the fact that the Xibalba Storm are going to do a lot of what we saw them do that time, especially based on the ward coverage that they've got here and the fact that with each passing minute, a snuck Gold Fury is a higher risk of taking place as Slash just continues to be bullied here, man.
Yeah, just as the ultimate was about to come back up, look at that diamond. It's 3/4 of the way there. He does not have that safety tool. Grave times it perfectly and utilizes the blink to get in there just as that ultimate is still down on cooldown. And for all of them, for all of the folks, like, this is relatively new. We haven't seen, I wonder if they decided to immediately focus down this lane just because of that early mistake. Like, Remakami gets the early solo kill, and they're like, okay, guys, shift. We're going to focus down this solo lane, get our Horus in a good position. And so far, it's working to the point where they're going to continue pushing on to the sky, slows down Elion, and they will get to the safety of that tier 1 tower. But the fight is just continuing on this right side.
And it's preventing Elion from really doing a whole lot of anything, because he's kind of on babysitter duty, trying to keep Slash at least alive and in this lane. And usually I like to tell people, you know, if you're a jungler and you've got a lane that's behind, it's usually a better investment of your time and your resources to go to a different lane and try to make something positive happen on a different part of the map than trying to fight back into your deficit. As long as you can get Slash to the point that he is at least not at risk of dying in this lane in the 1v1, you can try to pivot your attention.
Hold that thought. Tyrian Weavers, they pivot their attention. They just pick up the Gold Fury, and Bitey and Bolden are in the vicinity. They try to knock it down with the waves, but the penalty's so good. Hydrogen gets the double mez and Grave on the brink of dying, able to stay alive. They take down a pick onto the ADC. They grab the Gold Fury. Tyrian Weavers just do it out of nowhere. We didn't even catch it.
Yeah, we didn't even know that was going on until it was pretty much already too late. I mean, we pan over as the Gold Fury is dropping, and that's not by any, like, unusual circumstance that would cause it. It's just the fact that you don't often see a 7-minute, 30-second Gold Fury being pulled by the Tyrian Weavers here. It's just maybe they thought that the aggression from the Tyrian Weavers on the right side would draw members of the Xibalba Storm over there, and that would give them an opportunity. But it's once again the Weavers with a draft that has incredible burn from this Bakasura a second time around, the Merlin once again, and Hydrogen going for this high damage output build with the early Bloodforge. Gives them a whole lot of burn, and they just kind of sneak it away, not before the Storm get there, but before they're really in position to defend that one.
Rotations from the supports on this left-hand side, as well as I think Hydrogen gets the better end of that trade by a pretty large margin. He's found himself a 1.5 level lead or so on this left-hand side of the map, 10 to the 9, previously 8. He just ticked over. And Bitey, first time we're seeing this Rama picked up. I mean, I'm a little bit surprised he didn't go for the CERN or the Izanami or something that we've seen a little bit more from him in the previous 2 weeks. But back towards this Rama, and he is suffering in the pressure department.
Yeah, and it's a little surprising, too, because I have heard that the ROM matchup into the Ishtar is fairly favorable. Like, you just kind of shove the wave into her tower for the first 6 or 7 levels, and then past that point, you're fairly comfortable to just farm the wave. You don't have to be able to 1v1 the Ishtar like the Kernanos would be able to, just because you are so safe. There's no risk of you ever dying in that 1v1. And because of that, I thought, you know, Bitey would probably be okay over here, but the attention that the Weavers have paid to this side of the map after getting all of this pressure on right side, I mean, it is a playground on the right, which allows you to play a little bit more aggressive on the left without really having to worry about Remakami being okay. My man's got a 2-level lead. He's going to be just fine. It is totally okay for them to focus their attention on the left-hand side, give Hydrogen a bit of a boost in the lane against Bitey, and make sure that this ROM pick that was supposed to be pretty safe and just farm his way to the late game isn't going to be able to get there so comfortably.
Yeah, and I think you called it correctly. Elion has spent a lot of his time on this right-hand side trying to be a babysitter, and that is opened up the opportunity here. Remakami with the lead rotates toward this objective, but this time it's Elion and Slash who are on the front foot. Cavalry charge forward, but they get turned around on instantly. At least able to trade 1-for-1, though, is Slash, and it'll be mid laner for jungler. Grave on the jump out, no ultimates available now as Remakami trying to slow down the chase of the Storm, but a
Hello.
huge dash in from Briz, and a triple knockup from Ramakami, the blink in from Grave, and the Hydrogen 3-man ultimate. The rotation comes through, and 2 down. Hydrogen picks up a double, and he doesn't even need the Horus ultimate to help him chase. Briz may not get out of this safely, as he'll look and facilitate the triple on the rotation from Hydrogen. Both hunters come away with some kills. A scrappy fight, and the Weavers take down a couple.
And Vitey's still going to have to get on out of here, and it's going to be the Tyrian Weavers on the back of that engagement grabbing this Pyromancer, and it was just an overcommitment from the Xibalba Storm. They used the Nike jump in, as we're seeing here over this Pyromancer. The Tyrian Weavers grab that one. They're actually still looking for this fight, but with the blue team being so unhealthy, unlikely that we see any further sparks. With the investment that Leon and Slash put into killing Tripno there, Frog, in that engagement, they have to land that kill in a reasonable amount of time. And using the beads kept Tripno alive just long enough that the rest of the team could pump the damage in. We had a Grave Bakasura ult taking place at the same time, making sure that both of those tanks didn't just get to freely dive onto this Merlin, and instead reducing their health bars pretty quickly as they were attempting to land that kill. Those damage thresholds have to be coming through a lot quicker, otherwise the damage turnaround from the Tyrian Weavers is incredibly potent. And this is something that they're going to have to think about the next time they go for that kind of play where they just all in onto Tripno like that.
Yeah, man, I think the most surprising thing for that fight for me, don't get me wrong, I was pretty surprised when Hydrogen came through and felt like he won the team fight by himself with that ultimate after everybody had used everything. But I mean, the huge dash in from Briz, just to stay aggressive in a place where it kind of forced the rest of his team to keep engaging it, and he's not here for this primal period. It'll be Tyrian Weavers picking it up again.
Oh, they steal!
In the Xibalba Storm grabbed the last hit on the Gold Fury, 80 damage from bouncing Bubble, and Bolden takes away the objective. That's certainly a little bit of a boon, and all of a sudden it goes from a 4K lead to a 2K lead just like that.
And that's the woes of this team composition that the Tyrian Weavers have drafted. Their burn is incredible. They can turn around damage very effectively if they get dove too far deep, but they don't have anything to secure once again. It is once again Briz with the largest secure on the map, not there and also not needed because Bolden just coin flips a bouncing Bubble and manages to land it onto the Gold Fury at just the right moment. There isn't really one big burst of damage that they can really use for the Tyrian Weavers to secure these objectives. It's really just trying to burn them before the Xibalba Storm get there, or hoping that, you know, their small instance of damage beats out another small instance of damage coming in from the Xibalba Storm. That time, Bolden just right place, right time, and then as a result, the Fury goes their way.
Look at this collapse. Leon is deleted! He does not get to use the ultimate, and I'm not sure Bolden will get to use it either. He's using that Omi for an escape tool instead and will find his way out of that fight. But that wraparound from the Weavers, they make something out of nothing and take down Leon, who's already 2 levels behind in this fight. This rotation from Ramakami, they may use it even more, try and push down this tier 1 tower. Instead, it will look like they're going to try and back off. And I will say, for as much as they get out of that pick and out of these rotations, Ramakami has lost a little bit of his lead by rotating out and allowing Slash to farm.
Which is fine. I mean, you don't need to keep your 2-level lead as long as you're successfully making a positive impact on the other parts of the map. If you just let your lead rot in solo lane, then there's really no point in having it, Frog, unless you're going to be soloing the enemy laner on cooldown, and I mean, at this level, that's just incredibly unlikely. As long as Ramakami can transfer that lead to a different part of the map and make sure that other places are starting to go as well as his lane is, I'm not really that bothered by losing out on too much farm. It is a weird rotation for sure, though. I mean, like, he has no teleport available. To the Skies was not used there. He just walked all the way from solo lane or base or wherever he came from to a fight on the left-hand side of the map where there was no Gold Fury, and it didn't even really look like there should have been a fight. You can kind of forgive the Xibalba Storm for being caught off guard by it, but a good rotation and a successful one from Ramakami regardless.
Pyromancer picked up here by Graves. He will get poked down a little bit, just picking that up by himself. But Bolden may look for another miracle steal here and does not get that one. I'm sure the 80 damage was there, just maybe not in time for the rest of the autos coming through for the Weavers. So they'll grab the Pyromancer and they'll grab the Runic Bomb, now the first one they're holding on to. And that'll give a little bit of a split push, a chance for the Xibalba Storm to grab some more global gold. And all of a sudden, they had a really poor early game. They were down like 4,000 or 5,000 gold. Yep. And just through these small macro plays, they're bouncing back the objective. And of course, that Gold Fury steal, it almost feels like they're back at parity.
Yeah, and that'll happen when you just farm the map very effectively and try to prevent yourself from getting wrapped up in these fights, because once you're several thousand gold down early on, you'd really ideally like to avoid fighting and instead find better opportunities later on in the game. The Tyrian Weavers needed to sucker the Xibalba Storm into taking some of these bad fights and really make them risk something to step up to these objectives. But more often than not, the Storm just haven't been there, and it's been pretty fortunate either way, or they've just been farming it out and just saying, all right, go ahead and grab it, and we'll see you later. We've gotten to that point where it's later, Frog, and the Xibalba Storm are now only a very small margin behind. It can realistically look to fights around some of these objectives where they do have the big confirm available.
17 minutes in, and both of these teams have no questions about where the next big fight is going to happen. All 5 members have rotated over for both squads towards this next Gold Fury spawn. Just the standard Gold Fury, and you can see how eager these guys are to fight, just trading damage back and forth. Both of them have the healing to exchange these small poke battles, but with the Gold Fury, look how fast that just dropped down to half HP and heals back up. But a good set of Merlin abilities and drop down to half HP. The ultimate gets forced, and they're in fully on the engage. River's Rebuke traps in 3, but the space made by Remikami is punished out by the Storm. They take down 2. The divers from the Weavers don't get it done in the front line, and they both fall. Promise next on the chopping block, a double kill for Bitey, and everything has gone wrong. The Xibalba Storm answer back perfectly, take down 3, and they'll take the Gold Fury.
Off of a fantastic ult there from Bolden, as it looked like a great engage from the Tyrian Weavers. Remikami gets a great stun into that Merlin Void combo coming out of Tripno, put in some pretty big damage, and Graves saw that as his window to go in. He blinks in, he drops the Regurgitate, tries to start putting out the damage, but the turnaround from the Xibalba Storm was so fast that he only got a good auto or 2 off before he has to jump out of there in fear for his own life. And then that shell being down for Promise for 20 seconds at the time that Bolden ends up dropping that cooldown of the River's Rebuke in that fight makes it so that nobody from the Tyrian Weavers is capable of escaping there. And that's the susceptibility of Promise on this Sylvanas. He's prone to getting caught out like that. Now actually we're going to see a Fire Giant fight here, Frog.
Yeah, they lost the last fight, but they weren't happy with that. They don't need the fight. They want the Fire Giant, and it's down to 20% HP. They're looking to secure. They will take the Fire Giant, and they're out. In the silence of the night, and the Runic Bomb there for the secure. They grab the Fire Giant, and what a fantastic, not only mental bounce back, but macro bounce back from the Weavers to grab themselves that objective.
Yeah, well said, because there is no way that the Xibalba Storm thought that after the way that first fight around the Gold Fury pit went, the Tyrian Weavers would be doing much of anything aggressively, certainly not immediately taking themselves at a loss of cooldowns to the Fire Giant pit, and then trying to essentially coin flip the game on whether or not that one goes in their favor. Don't forget, no secure anywhere on their team. It's only Briz that has that big secure ultimate. So if that one gets stolen away, if it's just a stray bouncing bubble again, doing 80 damage to that Fire Giant, they could have been in a very bad spot here, but because they get it just in time, this burst once again continues to be absolutely insane between the Merlin and the double crit carries. It is incredibly fast the way that the Tyrian Weavers can take out these objectives. And the Xibalba Storm just outright were not ready for that.
Yeah, and I think we get a glimpse into how valuable this Pyromancer can be, this new Runic Bomb added for Season 10. They don't have any secure. You're absolutely right. It's just Briz with the potential to steal that, and it was the Runic Bomb placed down by Grave that's able to secure that. You're not out securing 1,000 damage if it is put at the right time in the right place. And now they've picked up the Runic Bomb potentially for the next Fire Giant Siege, but first we'll have to see what they do with this one, and there's certainly a lot to do. 2 tier 2 towers, or excuse me, tier 1 towers left on the map, 5 in total. Plenty of global gold to be picked up for the Tyrian Weavers, and potentially get themselves in the lead as they've grabbed this Fire Giant, and so far they're still down 500 gold.
And it probably will be a Fire Giant whose purpose is to sweep the towers here for the Tyrian Weavers. They would love to knock down every single one of these permanent structures left on the map and then just walk back with their pockets full of gold and reset for this next Fire Giant. And because of that, the Xibalba Storm know we need to be here to defend these towers. They're not down pretty much at all, Frog. It's only a couple hundred gold for the Xibalba Storm in the deficit, so they still can fight even against this Fire Giant team. You don't want to give away this huge lead. We're talking thousands and thousands of gold left sitting in these towers. Every single one is going to be important for the Tyrian Weavers to try to take down. So the Xibalba Storm not going to give up any of them easily, and are mounting a, so far, pretty successful defense on this right-hand side, leaving El Leon to rotate the map and find wherever Grave is trying to split push.
Yeah, both junglers just trying to go 1v1 in the mid lane. And I'm not sure Elion really wants to take the 1v1, probably just wants to force him off the tower, and so far he's doing a pretty successful job of doing that. And the rest of the 4 will force them back off of the tier 2 tower. They only got 1 tier 1 tower on the left-hand side. That is the entirety of their Fire Giant. And, you know, it's not like they were in a huge lead. It's not like they just immediately jumped in everything. And they may still push for this Gold Fury, but it almost feels like they just did the Fire Giant to try and take it away from the Storm more than get it themselves and have a power play.
It did feel like more of a stalling measure than anything else, because you're right, they didn't really develop a lead off of that at all. 1 tower is not going to constitute a lead for you, and now no longer having Fire Giant available, that one having fallen off already and due to respawn here in just a second or two, it's once again all 10 members, you said it previously, they're very well aware that the next fight will be taking place around this Gold Fury pit. It's actually an Oni Fury check that this time around. Everybody's here to play.
Ramakami will dash in and is already forced down. A great ultimate once again slows things down, but he leaves just the smallest gap, and the Tyrian Weavers are able to escape. Look for the re-engage to the skies, but nobody goes with him. Ramakami is just going to retreat and use the shield for himself. I thought was right. They were looking to re-engage there, but instead they'll provide an opportunity for this Storm to look at the Oni Fury, and the Weavers walk right in and take it away, but it opens up the fight on the back end. Storm on the chase, low health bars for the Tyrian Weavers, and it's Slash who's going to be in the front here. Will jump back on the horse. Bitey takes down Promise. Briz takes down Tripno, and Hydrogen may be the next to fall if they're looking to dive this Phoenix, and I think they certainly are. No doubt in anyone's mind. They're here for the kills, and they'll get 4 of them. The Phoenix is the afterthought, but at 24 minutes, they take a step back, they grab objective, they grab the fight, and they may look to end the game. It's only Grave here to defend. He has the regurgitate, but he has to be perfect. He has to find the damage onto everybody, and it is just not enough. They don't look like they have enough in the tank, but a 5-man Sylvanas ultimate slows things down enough, and Grave finds another. They're forced out of the Titan room. They find 3. Xibalba Storm can't do it. They have to retreat.
Grave still on the chase here, but Slash will not be stopping anytime soon. So at the end of the day, Frog, as we take a deep breath at the end of what was a very long sequence of events there for both of these teams, it's the Weavers successfully stepping up there and grabbing away the Oni Fury. Phoenix falls in left and just too over-aggressive from the Storm there. They wanted the end. This could have been their chance to get their first set victory here in the entire split, but instead they don't have the damage. Grave stalls for just long enough with that regurgitate and doesn't throw away his life to do so, allowing Promise to spawn. Titan still does a ton of damage, still incredibly healthy with all of these towers that were still available for the Weavers. Still got a tier 1 in right, tier 2s in right and mid as well. Just did not have the damage required. And at this point, the Weavers are the ones that are actually in position to take hold of this game, because as long as they can siege back a Phoenix of their own, they're basically the ones that come out on top of that engagement, having gotten not only the Oni Fury, not only the shutdowns on the Xibalba Storm, but now with this Fire Giant in tow, could look to swing things back in their favor.
I needed a longer breath, man. I'm stressed. What was that? Like, they just... They don't even get the Gold Fury. They let the Gold Fury almost go. They let it. Let is the right word. They back off the Gold Fury. The Weavers walk in to take it, and they just find the chase. It felt like they were in control of that walk down the entire time until they overstep. And that's got to be looming in their minds. But you're absolutely right. They grabbed the Fire Giant for the Weavers, and now they have room to potentially push this up, as they've already wasted a third of it, right? They have to make this push worthwhile. The last push only grabbed a couple of tier 1 towers, and it's still all the tier 2 towers available, but I'm not sure the Xibalba Storm are going to try and defend those. They may just look to defend the Phoenix.
I don't know. They're at least stepping up and thinking about it. Pings come out here as they do, in fact, step up underneath this tier 2 tower and give a little bit more homework for the Tyrian Weavers to do here. Won't be able to just sweep through these towers and then line up against the Phoenixes, chipping off some valuable time on that FG buff.
Yeah, the Minion Wave will push in here, and doesn't look like they want to put up a hard defense here, just trying to grab some abilities, grab some cooldowns, and look at that. Grave and Elion traded ultimates over in the mid lane. Both of them experience. I mean, Grave's still pretty high health, so it looks like he may have gotten the better end of that trade, but will not have the regurgitate now available for a large team fight here, as they'll grab the tier 2 in left and have yet another minion wave here pushing down in the middle of the lane. They'll walk in, and once again, the Xibalba Storm not willing. Hope the ultimate comes through, and it may be the ult after the fact from the Rama, and they're looking to fight as well. Promise hits 2 with the ultimate, but will be backed off. The Xibalba Storm don't find everything they want, but that's a surprising ultimate to come out of Briz, just out of nowhere.
Just rips it, and as long as it lands onto Tripno there, it's worthwhile, because that forces them to back up. With that low of HP, they cannot be allowed to be engaged on, so Tripno probably makes the call there that I'm too low, we have to back up. And now Fire Giant completely gone from the Weavers, and it's going to be the Storm on the Oni.
Once again, this Primal Fury may be where the fight starts, and sure enough, a blink in from Slash, and he's waiting to hop on that horse. He will grab 3 potentially with the stun, but Grave on the other side of things has traded out with his jungle. Bitey down to a low HP as well, but Briz helps out with the trade onto Grave, and all of a sudden the Xibalba Storm are on the back, but they're running away. Bitey taken down. Elion has fallen as well, and Bolden's running the wrong way into the enemy jungle. Tripno will eventually clean up this kill towards the Gold Fury, and I'm not sure it's enough to grab anybody at the end of the game, but that stall tactic grabs the Storm, the Phoenix, and a window for the Fire Giant now.
Yeah, Phoenix falling there in favor of the Storm, as you can see in the left lane. The Fire Minions successfully pushing that one down during the course of that fight is very relevant for the Storm, because otherwise that could have been a tough fight for them, but they do at least get something for their trouble after a spectacular defense shutting down the Fire Giant push of the Tyrian Weavers, who haven't really had a lot of success with that FG buff so far, man. It is been basically only a couple of towers that they've managed to get off of it, and now they're still a little bit in the lead, but the map state still really favoring the Storm because they have that base already broken open. EFG due to spawn in the next couple of seconds here, or at least upgrade to the big boy, that means that this next buff is going to be a much bigger value for either one of these teams to be grabbing. If the Tyrian Weavers can successfully grab this one, maybe, Frog, with another shot at it, they'll be able to break this base open fully and take one of the Phoenixes down for the Xibalba Storm. Whereas across the way, if the Storm grab this one and win the fight convincingly enough around this Fire Giant pit, with that Phoenix down and left, they can just walk on into this Titan room and look for a second attempt at ending this game.
Our first 30-plus minute game of the series, and it makes sense. There's a lot more on the line in this Game 3. You don't get another chance after this for your Week 3 match. It's win or lose, potentially, around this Fire Giant. And interestingly enough, this is the first real Fire Giant we've seen of the game. Real Fire Giant fight, rather, right? Everything else has been around this Gold Fury, and we've seen a free Fire Giant and one that got snuck away by the Weavers early on. But this is a full-on 5v5, and nobody wants to make the first misstep. And, I mean, now that they're seeing Grave on the map on the left-hand side, they may try and force their hand.
And it looks like they're going to grab it now. Keep in mind, Briz does have that big burst ultimate available, so could be a good shot for them. 2 runic bombs, though, for the Tyrian Weavers make this a little bit more difficult.
On a half HP, and Bolden is the first target there, grabbed by the Sylvanas ultimate, but the waves trap some people in as the shell allows them to move around. And Grave, he's looking for the regurgitate, but Elion with the knockup, he's not able to find the engage he wants, and it's a trade out 1-for-1 to start the fight. A double knockup, though, and the Bitey into the air, looking to clean up. Hydrogen needs the last one and will not hit it, but Elion doing everything he can to force down the team. A beautiful pull will nab another pick, and Trickno adds to the tally as 3 fall in the blink of an eye for the Xibalba Storm. And the Tyrian Weavers, despite fire minions pushing into their base, will grab the enhanced Fire Giant.
And Bitey gets the back stopped out in the solo lane, so won't be able to reset or be in time to defend that FG buff. And what a wild fight there, man. Leon, he's been kind of quiet in this Game 3. The Nike hasn't really done what we've needed it to, but in that fight, he makes a play that is not very flashy, but is necessary to make sure that the Xibalba Storm don't lose that in much more spectacular fashion. If Grave jumps over that wall and drops the regurgitate immediately, that is a 1 fight from the Tyrian Weavers. But because Leon gets that jump in and knocks him up before he can get that cast off, that allows at least some trades to go down in favor of the Xibalba Storm to prevent them from outright losing the game there. He saves the game, doesn't manage to save the FG pit, however, as that does go down to the Tyrian Weavers, as you said, but what a great fight from them. Once again, stepping forward, getting great value out of Tripno on this Merlin. Top damage in the lobby on this mid lane pick, making it happen despite the fact that the dive has been very oppressive from Slash. Granted, that time around didn't have to deal with Elion as well, but their backline is starting to pump out these numbers to the point that the Xibalba Storm are kind of crumpling here. If they don't get a good wall from Bolden, if they don't get an over-aggressive engage from Slash and Elion, it doesn't look like they feel too comfortable in these fights. Keep an eye on that River's Rebuke ultimate as we go into this Phoenix Siege, because that's probably going to be the do-or-die play from the Xibalba Storm here against this Fire Giant Siege from the Tyrian Weavers.
I love that he's top damage in the lobby by like 30.
Not anymore.
It's not even true anymore. Ramakami grabs something in mid, but they've really struggled on these sieges thus far. It's taken them 3 Fire Giants, and they still have not knocked down all of the tier 2 towers on the map. Now they've got the EFG in their back pocket, and that's going to make things at least a little bit easier. So far, it's a 3-2 split, and this split look may be a good idea to try and balance out the siege.
It does make it so that they don't have to worry about as many people getting caught by a cavalry charge or a River's Rebuke, or 2 people should never, in this situation, be getting hit by a Final Judgment. And those are the main combat tools that the Xibalba Storm have to put out. It does look like the rotation's coming back over from Ramakami, though. Don't forget, Frog, with this Horus, they could look for some shenanigans with a To the Skies bringing them to a different Phoenix, but at least for the time being, everybody's grouped up here in the left lane.
Will try to find the engage, and a blink in from Ramakami starts things off. The Phoenix is already down to half HP, and Briz has used the final judgment to knock Hydrogen down to 50% HP, and everything stalls once again. They've got the healing, they've got the minions, and they have the blink in from Grave this time. A two-man regurgitate, but it's the engage on the other side, and Slash finds the last hit on the Grave and will be traded out in the process. The Phoenix will fall with just a couple more autos, and Hydrogen grabs that one as Tripno trades out for Elion, and Bolden captured in the base. Tripno finds two. A beautiful back and forth, and they're playing it on the thinnest of margins, the low health bars from the Tyrian Weavers, but they come away with 3, and they come away with the Phoenix. Big fight from the Blue Squad.
That's the critical component there of that fight. They do finally break the base, and actually looking for a little bit more here. Bitey's up by himself. Still 4 members of the Weavers pushing forward.
Bitey will be pushed up a little bit, but Briz, he trades it out, and a beautiful pull will take his life as well. Bitey gets traded out, Briz gets traded out, and it was just that. It was just free and a Phoenix, but the carries push up a little bit too far. They open up the window, and the Tyrian Weavers take game number 3 in the set.
And it was hard fought. It, like you said, took 3 Fire Giants for them to finally break this base and take down that left Phoenix that they had been staring at all game long. But as soon as they finally managed to break it in, man, it was all that she wrote for the Tyrian Weavers there. And the Xibalba Storm just outright pushed up too far there at the end. You can't say that Bitey was in a good spot there. Briz came in, tried to help peel for him, did land the kill onto Remikami, but, you know, because too far up, too few people to work with there, that's just the game, man. You can't be making those kinds of mistakes when you don't have vision on everybody. They could still be around. You know, granted, everybody was low HP, but that is realistically the only bad thing that could happen there is if you push up and get caught. If he just hangs out in the base, it's a completely different story. But credit where it's due to the Weavers for putting up a hell of an offense. And finally, after butting their head against the wall for time after time after time, they did manage to break the base and end the game.
Yeah, no points for lack of trying there. I mean, they did not get discouraged even after the first Fire Giant, where they got 1 tier 1 tower. That was all they got on the first Fire Giant, and they just kept at it. They got the first one by sneaking it away. They got the second one after a base defense goes successfully for them, and then finally on the third one, they're forced to win a fight, and they do so in fantastic fashion. Excuse me. I mean, we still see some nothing was a clean 5-on-5. Nothing was a clean we just had a huge Bakasura ultimate like we saw in game number 1. But these little flashes of brilliance, that's the difference. You see that consistently on those fight wins from the Tyrian Weavers. My mind still goes back to that pull through the wall onto Elion right around that Fire Giant, and then just the thought to wait around that corner in case Bitey pushed up at every moment. They've got those flashes of ideas, and they take the set as a result.
And across the way, once again, Frog, it makes me wonder, what does this Xibalba Storm composition do if Elion is not comfortable in the jungle? Like game number 2, the only game they won in this set, it was Elion's jersey that we were calling every single fight. And then games 1 and 3, he's much quieter. And as a result, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like that piece missing is too much for them to deal with. When Elion is not on, if you give him something like the Nike where he can't really make such a significant impact, it feels like they just can't make something happen. I want to see them put him on things that can carry the game. Give him the set. The Naja was banned away. The Hunbats was banned away. Give him something else that can make a bigger impact on the landscape of these team fights, because the utility-based characters, the Hell, the Nike, I haven't been sold on him. When Leon is hot, when Leon is comfortable, this team looks so good. But when the Xibalba Storm don't have that driving force in the jungle, it seems like they lose a little bit of direction.
Gotta learn to feed the hot hand, and I'm sure the Xibalba Storm will be looking to change things up after an 0-3 start here in the SEC. But congratulations to the Tyrian Weavers, taking game number 3 there in week number 3, and that's going to do it from us. I've been Frog, joined by Kaizo. We're not done with the Smite action for the week. Join us tomorrow at bright and early at 9 a.m. The Wargs going up against the Bolts on the EU side of things. SPL coming at you as well. We still have plenty of SMITE action to come this weekend, but that'll do it for us. We will see you tomorrow.